Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, and so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show. Booyah!
And here we are. G. Bush was supposed to come off the injured list. He was on his rehab assignment, and he got pulled back. He had a setback, and so he's gone. Earl is in for him today.
What's up?
Earl?
How you feel?
I'm feeling good. How are you feeling?
It's football day. The Browns is back. Football
The Browns
is
are
back.
not back.
I don't give a damn if it don't count.
It don't count.
It's football. Football is back, baby.
We can't treat it the same
Here
as the
we
regular
go,
season.
Brownies. Here we go.
You ready to watch Hassan Hall carry the ball
Do you
tonight?
care if they win tonight?
No.
Okay.
I care if they come out this thing healthy.
I thought for sure you were going to say yes.
No, I just care if they come out this thing healthy.
Yeah. Stop telling me it's the season has started. It hasn't. All right? If you play this game and never play in the regular season, you didn't play in the NFL. That's a fact.
You still
But be
keep the
excited.
game ball
What the
if you
hell?
catch the
And then
touchdown.
people get mad at me on Twitter like, why can't we get excited, Bull? Why do you have to be because I say I don't give a shit about the preseason, it means you can't get excited? If your mood is affected by what I say, you've got bigger problems than that. Jason, you're here.
Can you put,
Excitable
your, can
as
you put
always.
your Instagram
Oh
videos
my
down
God!
long enough to do a show?
I cannot stop watching Instagram. I almost threw up. I'm going to be close. I came this close to shitting myself. I came this close to dropping a deuce in my pants 2 minutes before the show. I was
I
laughing
thought
so
you were
hard.
going to die. I'm like, well, we're already
We're already
down one. Like, there's nobody left.
I'm watching these Instagram videos. I can't get enough. Some of these videos are so funny. And Jason's like, oh, I saw that one that's old. But I hadn't seen it, so it's funny.
Oh, man.
Bull wound up on fat girl Instagram.
It's all these fat people. It wasn't just girls. There was some fat guys, too. And, like, as a fat guy, I would, appreciate not wanting to be embarrassed. It was, by the way, I'll tell you, because I was watching all these videos of, like, fat people getting effed up. And I even mentioned this before, I had an embarrassing experience. Not necessarily because I was fat. It could have happened to anybody, but it happened to me, and it was embarrassing. We were at watching, during the Little League playoffs, we were watching a game. Our team had been eliminated. We're watching a game, and we're sitting at the end of the stands. And one of the wooden slats for the stands that you sit on extended a little longer than the others. And I was walking to go to the concession stand, and I rammed right into that piece, fell down.
Took a digger.
Oh, my God. It was so embarrassing. It hurt like a mother. But that was embarrassing. I guess a skinny person could have done that, too, but we don't know. Anyway, a lot to get to today. The Hall of Fame game is tonight. Great Hall of Famers will be playing in this game tonight. No Hall of Famers. I guess it's possible. I wonder how many actual Hall of Famers have played in the Hall of Fame game.
Zach Wilson's playing tonight.
Yeah, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer.
You don't
I think
know.
It's a safe bet.
It's early.
It's Zach Wilson and Kellen Mond. But was there just a point spread on there?
Yeah.
Earl, did you put? Yeah, Earl,
Is
did
there
you
a
put
point
spread on there?
It
was
is
a
amazing.
-1.5?
Like, you have to be if you bet on preseason, you are a high-level degenerate if you bet on preseason. How do they even come up with the lines? I got to ask my guys at Bet Rivers how they come up with the lines for preseason games. Like, how do you even figure that out? Is it that Zach Wilson's better than Kellen Mond?
I don't know. Is it concerning that the Jets are favored? Is that a problem?
Well, the Jets are like... the Jets, to me, are very similar to the Browns in that I think they're the two most likely teams that were under 500 last year in the AFC to make the playoffs.
One of them is going to be massively disappointing this year.
Agreed.
I don't know which one. Maybe both.
If you had to bet on Browns, Jets both making the playoffs or both not making the playoffs, what would you bet?
Well, as stacked as the AFC is, I think you'd have to bet not. I don't think that's the case, but I think you'd have to bet that they wouldn't make
Earl?
the playoffs.
I would bet that they would. I think these are two talented teams. I think that these teams are ready to take the next step. I would bet that they would. There's so much change from the NFL year to year. So,
I'm leaning towards putting the Browns and Jets as the 6 and 7 seed in the AFC. At this moment, I'm not ready to make official predictions yet, but at this moment, I'm leaning towards the Browns and the Jets as the 6 and 7 seed, knocking out the Dolphins and Ravens from last year.
I think one of them makes the playoffs and one of them doesn't.
Yeah.
One's in, one's out.
But I think they're both in the same boat.
They are.
There's a lot of expectations.
They could be 6 and 11. They could be 11 and 6. I don't think either one would really be that
weird.
surprising.
Like, There's both some unknown for the quarterback. Deshaun Watson's first full year with the Browns. Aaron Rodgers is obviously his first year period. Aaron Rodgers is obviously more proven than Watson, but Aaron Rodgers is old.
Yeah.
He's going to turn, 40 this year or 39?
39.
So does he have one great year left? Tyvus says he thinks he does. Tom Brady in his last year with New England seemed to be on the decline, and then his first couple of years in Tampa Bay was fantastic. Whereas Deshaun Watson's coming off a year where he didn't play well, but only 6 games, didn't play the year before. So it all comes down to the quarterbacks. If Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers both play up to their capabilities, then both of those teams should be in the playoffs. And if they don't, then neither team will. Because in the AFC, you're not getting anywhere with bad quarterback play.
No.
You can sneak into the playoffs in the NFC if you got a great running game and a really good defense, and maybe you're getting subpar quarterback play. You can't get to the playoffs in the AFC with subpar quarterback play. That's not happening. Yeah. It's just too deep and too talented in the AFC. Anthony, what's going on?
Yeah, guys, before we get into tonight's game, I just want to remind everybody that for $4.99 a month, you can become a member of Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. You get overtime. You get some benefits at the Cleveland Clothing Company. And today's overtime is going to be how demoralizing is it that Rosario and Bell had a great outing last night for both of their new 2 teams. And then, without further ado, we can get in to the first game preview tonight for the Hall of Fame game.
All right, Jason, start us off. What do you got your eye on for tonight's Hall of Fame game?
The clock.
Okay, besides the clock. I mean, is it some of the
Come on, Jason.
Is it some guys battling for roster spots? Do you have your eye on anything tonight?
No, not. I mean, DTR actually in the second half. I'm curious to see. This is the backup quarterback of the future, allegedly, and Kellen Mond's going to get the start tonight, but Mond more than likely is not going to be on this team going forward.
Probably not.
It's going to be obviously Deshaun, Dobbs, and DT and Dorian. So I want to see him. He's got a similar skill set to Deshaun. That's kind of why they took him. And I guess just overall, even though it's not going to be the starting offense and Deshaun out there, there's still going to be, I believe, it's going to be the offense. It's going to be that offense. It's going to be a lot of pre-snap motion. It's going to be a lot of rollouts. It's going to be, some different formations than what we've seen before. So even though it's not the players that you're going to see this year, I do think you're going to at least be able to get a little bit of a glimpse of what this offense is going to look like because they're going to be running those same plays.
Earl, how about you?
I think for me is I'm really excited to see Cedric Tillman. I know Cedric Tillman is a rookie and not much is expected of him, but we do know this is the NFL, and we know an injury can happen just like that. And so just to see him get his feet wet, just to see him get acclimated being on an NFL field, I'm interested to see what he'll do out there because there might come a point in time in the season to where he is asked to contribute. We know how important the wide receiver position is in today's NFL, and we know guys go down and they get hurt all the time. Boy, me and you were 2 people who felt like the Browns should have went after DeAndre Hopkins. I think you kind of felt the same way. And so, Amari Cooper has already dealt with a tweak. Injury is unknown. We probably won't have Marquise Goodwin for this year. And so just looking at things like that, if Cedric Tillman can show something, maybe we can get a bigger return on investment sooner than what we thought.
So I'm with you on Tillman. I do think when you watch the preseason for us, the viewer, the fan, is pretty meaningless because a guy playing well in these games, especially a game like this where there's no starters playing, and even a lot of second, even second backup players who are locks for the roster probably aren't playing much in a game like this, if at all. And so if a Cedric Tillman went off for a big game, we'll have fans that will overreact to that, and that's something you just got to be careful with. I will say that I am curious not only about Cedric Tillman, but the wide receiver room in general. I want to see how those guys are running routes. I want to see how they're used in this game. Like, who is in the starting group tonight at wide receiver? What does that mean in terms? Because
Anthony Schwartz,
right? It's an opportunity to make some plays that you can't necessarily translate to the regular season, but may translate into a spot on the roster. As far as Cedric Tillman playing, I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with injuries. He's going to be a part of this offense. At very least, I expect him to be their 4th wide receiver, and the 4th wide receiver gets opportunities.
Yeah, that's
not
true.
Just if there's injuries, because again, we went back to this yesterday. Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones, they're not like studs. Donovan Peoples-Jones he's a good, solid third wide receiver. We're hoping Elijah Moore can turn into a number 2. He hasn't shown that yet. I think you drafted Cedric Tillman in the 3rd round. I don't think they drafted him to sit the bench as a rookie.
No.
He's going to play.
Somebody's going to emerge as that 4th,
yes.
whether it's Tillman or somebody else. There's a lot of opportunities.
Right, he has an opportunity, and if he plays well, if he shows them something between camp and the preseason, then he's going to get more opportunity. Nobody in this wide receiving core is established enough that Cedric Tillman couldn't get some playing time. Even as a 4th receiver, you're going to play.
Yeah.
And I guess he's battling for that 4th receiver spot with with Bell and I guess Anthony Schwartz and some of these other undrafted guys. Who was it that somebody mentioned yesterday? Dalen Thompson or
what's his name? Darden. The guy.
Jalen Darden's one of them.
Jalen Darden is one of them. No, I get Bull's point, but I think he's definitely helped himself. That's been clear. He's had a solid camp so far. If you listen to people who's been following the team closely, and then circumstances has created opportunity for him. So I definitely think he'll compete. But I think that when we look at the tight end group, to me, I think we have to just consider them all as just a pass catching unit. When you look at a guy like Atkins, I've heard Mary Kay talk about that. This is a tight end who kind of lines up at wide receiver a lot. A guy that can play like a wide receiver. We know what David Njoku is. We know what Harrison Bryant is. So I do think it'll be opportunities there for Cedric Tillman, but I do think just the pass catching unit as a whole, I think that he has a lot of weapons to throw to. So, but Cedric Tillman I felt like they drafted him to be Donovan Peoples-Jones' replacement, possibly. That could be very true. I think when he was drafted, we all said that. And so just knowing that, just to see him get out there, and be able to do his thing. I know he made a pretty good highlight play the first day back in Berea the other day that made fans go crazy. So it'd be interesting. A guy like Anthony Schwartz, boy, I know you say, like, if a guy goes crazy, you have to understand the competition that's out there. But you can only play who's put in front of you.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And it's an opportunity for them.
And it's an opportunity for them.
Yeah.
We've seen other guys for the Cleveland Browns in the past that used the preseason to make this roster, and then we've seen them actually have some success. It wasn't much with a guy like Isaiah Crowell, who balled his ass off in the preseason, or Josh Cribbs, for example, way back when. So you got to play who's in front of you and just take advantage of the opportunity. A guy like Anthony Schwartz, I think he needs this. Jason, you say he'll probably be out there starting. Maybe it's him and Cedric Tillman starting. I don't know if Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to play or not, but if it's him and Tillman, those two young men got an opportunity to just show the coaches and the scouts and Andrew Berry something.
It'd be nice to see a young Browns receiver contribute right away. I mean, we almost have never seen that outside of Josh Gordon. And probably Tillman's not going to get an opportunity to be a starter, right? Because there's 3 guys ahead of him on the depth chart. So he probably won't have much of an opportunity to put up any kind of big numbers. Mm-hmm. But the Browns have not really had a wide receiver make an impact as a rookie.
Right. I think there's a difference. You don't want him being a big contributor right away because that means something went terribly wrong. Somebody got hurt.
I look at it as he's so good we can't keep him out of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, to your point,
yeah,
you'd like to see these guys get on the field and make a first down catch and move the chains. Make a big third down catch. We haven't seen that from Anthony Schwartz or David Bell or any of these other younger receivers.
But the truth is, Jason, that when the year that Nick Chubb was a rookie, what was that, 2017?
2018.
2018? Remember who the Browns' starting running back was that year?
It was Carlos Hyde.
Yeah. Carlos Hyde, right? If you go back and look at it, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you go back and look at that season, the first, I want to say 5-6 games, whatever it was, Nick Chubb was only getting like 4 or 5 carries a game. And Carlos Hyde was getting like 15 carries. They had another back, too. I can't remember now. There was a 3-back rotation there, and Nick Chubb was getting the least of it. And Carlos Hyde was getting the majority of the carries early that season, and he was doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And Nick Chubb was getting like 5 carries for 50 yards. And after a couple of weeks, a bunch of us were like, well, what the hell's going on? Let's get rid of Carlos Hyde. Yeah. Let's play Nick Chubb. And so things like that can happen. I get it. Nick Chubb was a second-round pick. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like he was a complete short thing. He'd come off a lot of injuries in college, and he became a star. I'd love to see a situation, not necessarily where the starting guy is bad, but a situation where Cedric Tillman is so good every time he's on the field that you can't keep him out. Yeah. And that hasn't happened with the Browns at that position in forever.
Pickens last year in Pittsburgh. George Pickens last year in Pittsburgh.
Exactly. And I'd love to see that happen this year. I don't. It might be hard for that opportunity to actually happen, but I'd love to see him be so good. You know, because you think about the young receivers they've added in recent years. You know, Donovan Peoples-Jones has done a nice job, but it's been a slow build with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Not surprisingly, a late pick. But David Bell showed nothing last year. Anthony Schwartz showed nothing the year before. And these three guys now with Tillman were all relatively high picks. The first two have shown nothing. I think we've all given up on Schwartz at this point.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have given up on Bell. I think it's unfair after 1 year, but we'll see. But now Tillman's the new hope. So let's, I don't want him to be Donovan Peoples-Jones. I want him to be the next Amari Cooper. Or better.
Yeah.
Like, they're wide receivers sometimes in the third round that end up being great players. Let's say hope that he's one of those guys.
Well, I know McNuggets had did a lot of research on him after the Browns drafted him and talked to somebody that he knew that actually worked with the Tennessee Volunteers personally. And then, I would listen to the radio and I would listen to different college scouts. And a lot of people have first-round grades on him, or at minimum a early second-round grade. But I think, he got hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that definitely hurt his draft stock. I don't know if he had any character issues or anything like that. But
I don't think so.
This is a dude who's a solid football player. This is a guy who, before Jalen Hyatt took off as this big-name deep threat, that he was considered Tennessee's #1 wide receiver. And he put up some pretty good numbers until he got hurt. So there's a lot of #1 potential seemingly with Cedric Tillman. It's just about getting the opportunities, as you said, to put it all together. But to Jason's point, when you look at this offense being the same, no matter who the quarterback is, because all quarterbacks in the quarterback room are so similar, I think he will get the opportunities. He might not be grade A considering, the units he's playing with, but the opportunities would reward itself, and I think he'd be okay.
He doesn't have burning speed. That's the one thing that holds him back.
But you don't have to.
He's so big.
Yeah.
And he has such a great catch radius. I saw him make a couple catches in West Virginia that were he's the biggest. I think he's the biggest receiver on the team. From what I was seeing. I saw him the first time. I'm like,
he's bigger than Amari.
He's a big. Oh, he's way bigger
than
Amari. He's a big dude.
From a physical standpoint and a skill set standpoint, he kind of reminds me of T. Higgins a little bit. Like T. Higgins is not a burner.
Yeah.
But he's big.
He's a great route runner.
He's a great route runner, and he catches everything.
I would actually like to see Tillman on Martin Emerson on a route. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Those are two big
that is
dudes.
fun. Yeah.
I'll tell you one other thing worth watching tonight is some of the guys getting an opportunity at defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Because and again, I could say, well, all right, but they're facing backups. But that's okay. And that's a position where I think I could take something, certainly the Browns can take something out of, hey, was I able to hold up in the pocket, against the center, against the guards? Was I able to stop the run? Was I able to create an opportunity for a linebacker to make a play? The defensive tackle position, in terms of remember, they rotate on that defensive line. So you're going to have 3, if not 4 defensive tackles that are going to get an opportunity to play a significant amount of plays. And the Browns only have one guy that's a short thing at that position we know Dalvin Tomlinson is going to play a lot. Outside of that, we have no clue who's going to be second, third, and fourth in snaps on at defensive tackle. And so and some of it might be Myles Garrett occasionally or some of the defensive ends. But there's an opportunity to get real playing time, and that challenge starts tonight.
You'll get your first look at Siaki Ika tonight, I would imagine.
Right. I would think Maurice Hurst, even though he's a veteran, is going to play.
I was just thinking about him. I'm not sure because there's such an injury concern. Do you really want to run him out here? But he has got to play.
We got to see. Yeah, he's fighting for a job.
I think go ahead.
Tommy Togiai. I mean, he's probably not going to be here.
He's the Anthony Schwartz of the D line.
Yeah, he'll be out there tonight.
Yeah.
I think the one for me is Tristan Hill. Like when you talk to people, and I was listening to an interview with the defensive line coach. And they was asking him of the guys who he thought was getting off the line of scrimmage the fastest. And he shocked me when he says, Tristan Hill from the defensive tackle position seems to be the one guy that's getting off the line of scrimmage faster than anybody else. I don't know what the situation was in Dallas. I don't know much about him. But that's a guy that can, possibly make some noise. It seems like he's caught the coach's attention already. So it'll be interesting to see what he do. But I think outside of the defensive tackle position, I look at the linebacker room as well. You know what I mean? That's considered by most the weakest position on the team. And so, you got Jordan Phillips back coming off an injury. You got Sione Takitaki back coming off the injury. So it'd be interesting to see how guys like that play. I do feel like even though, guys won't play this game, but just throughout the preseason, a guy like Jock, right, who's had so many expectations upon him since he's been drafted. And I heard him speak earlier in camp when it was at the Greenbrier. He talked about feeling more free and feeling like he can play to his skill set in Jim Short's defense. So it'd be interesting the tweaks to see has been made with the linebackers and how they react to it compared to how they deal with Joe Woods.
Well, you mentioned Tristan Hill who's a defensive tackle, and then the linebackers. Those are spots where there may be a name that kind of like Tristan Hill that sort of comes out of nowhere, maybe even more obscure than that. Some guy that stands out. I know somebody the other day mentioned, the linebackers haven't looked really good in training camp, but we still got a lot of time in the preseason, more camp. So there's a lot of time for defensive tackle and linebacker. Even though we know some of the names at linebacker, none of them are such short things that somebody from out of the blue couldn't come take a job. I mean, that happens sometimes, and it could happen there, and it certainly could happen at defensive tackle. Nobody to me, at defensive tackle or linebacker for the Browns, in my opinion, should be guaranteed a starting job outside of
Dalvin Tomlinson.
Dalvin Tomlinson. That's it. And again, I know there's guys we assume will be starters, especially at linebacker, but to me, nobody's played well enough at that position on this team that they should be a sure thing. If there's some guy we never heard of who made the team, it was undrafted and just kills it, and they're like, well, this guy's better. I don't care that he wasn't drafted or is not a name. Let's go with the best guy you can get.
This might be
they'll do.
This might be an unpopular take, and Jason, you can weigh in on this as well. Anthony Walker, I feel like was re-signed because he's considered the heart and soul of the team. He's a good locker room guy, a good veteran and leader to have on his team. But when Sione Takitaki got his opportunities to play as the Mike linebacker, I thought we seen him in a different light that we had never seen him before. And so I understand that, Anthony Walker has been considered the captain or that guy. But I think Takitaki is a guy that you're talking about that if he goes out there and show it, it might be hard not to make him that Mike linebacker because I think he excelled when he got the opportunities in that role.
He had his best performance when he moved to the middle for the Browns. I think Anthony Walker's better. He's just a better football player. But for Takitaki, where he was playing to the level he went to when he moved to the middle, 100%. He was much better. I just think Anthony Walker is a better player. So I think he's still a starting middle linebacker.
I agree, but it is tricky because I agree with what Earl said. He was better. He's more of a fit to play middle linebacker.
He's younger, all that. But at this point, you're trying to win football games right now. Give me Anthony Walker in the middle. But Takitaki looked lost. Looked like his days in Cleveland were numbered down the outside, frankly. And when he moved to the middle, he was better.
Now maybe Jim Schwartz finds a way to make him effective on the outside more. We'll have to see how he does it. JOK, as you said, seemed excited about the way they're changing up the defense, and so maybe that's different. Another guy, we're not going to see him tonight, but another guy just kind of sparked because you talk about Takitaki playing well down the stretch. I thought Grant Delpit played really well down the stretch too. And he's a guy who looked like, they drafted him high. He was a second-round pick. Mm-hmm. And his first couple of years with the Browns, injury, and he wasn't performing. And even at the beginning of last year, I'm like, I think Grant Delpit's just not the guy. But the second half of last year, like Takitaki, which in Delpit's case, he won't have to change positions, I thought Delpit played his best football. And so we've talked a lot about Juan Thornhill making the Browns secondary better, and I think he will because he's better than Johnson. But I also think if we get the Grant Delpit we had in the second half of the year for a full season, then that's a big upgrade too because I thought he was a different player the last 7-8 games of the year.
This is a big year for him.
Yeah,
it's sort of a make or break year for him, really. And he can be a missile back there. It just seems when you limit his responsibilities and you simplify his role, he can take off. It's when you make him stand there and think and process more often is when things seem to break down.
And I think that's why having Jim Schwartz as his defensive coordinator, I think we will see him take that next step. Everybody talks about Jim Schwartz's defense being so simple to understand, so to where they're not out there thinking too much. They can just go out there and play football. I don't know what took Joe Woods so long. I think he was forced to do so. But towards the end of the season, you start seeing him play Grant Delpit at his more natural safety position, more closer to the line of scrimmage, more in the box, put him in position to be able to be a playmaker. And here it is, Jim Schwartz, that's his plan for him all along. So If he can stay healthy and really just, not only sustain how he finished last season, but take it to the next step, I think he could be like that breakout player for the Cleveland Browns this year.
More important than the game tonight is, of course, the fact that Joe Thomas is going in the Hall of Fame. He'll finally be enshrined, and he's the first Cleveland Browns player in forever. Who was the last Browns player to go into the Hall of Fame? Do you know it offhand? I'm just thinking about that. I'm like, can't even think of it.
I looked this up, or I read it recently, but I don't remember.
Who the hell is the last Browns player in the Hall of Fame? It's been a long time.
I'm trying to think of it. I think in the 80s somebody was inducted. Oh, Ozzie.
Okay.
Ozzie.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
What year was that?
What year did he go in? I don't know. That would have been the 90s that he went in, I think.
Let's see.
And I think he was working in Baltimore at the time when he went in, if I'm mistaken. I don't know.
So I was born in 1987, right?
Oh.
I vaguely remember the Cleveland Browns before they left here in 95. And so most of my memory is 99 into now.
So 99, he went in the Hall of Fame?
And,
Yep, 99.
And to see Joe Thomas going to the Hall of Fame, I think personally is pretty cool because a lot of the Browns teams that I've seen in my lifetime has been horrible, right?
Yeah.
And this was a guy to me who I got much respect for. Me and Anthony was talking about this. You had an opportunity to be traded to go win the Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning, but you opted to stay here. And not too many people opt to stay in Cleveland when you have an opportunity to go elsewhere. I always thought that he was truly a pillar of the community. I thought he was a guy that represented the organization very, very well on and off the field, and that he truly set the example. He played with all kind of injuries that we never knew about, torn ACLs, sprained this and sprained that, and he got out there every single day and he bust his ass, and he really showed that he was the epitome of Cleveland. A lot of people will talk about a former quarterback who used to be here, and they would say that, he represents Cleveland. He gets us. And to me, he didn't. I think Joe Thomas is the guy who truly represents Cleveland well. This is a guy who brings his hard hat and his lunch pail every single time he comes to work. And it's unfortunate, his rookie season was the year the Browns, I think, won 10-6 and didn't make the playoffs. And who knew that it would be as good as it gets for him in his career?
Yeah. I think I originally, the first thing about Joe that stuck out to me was on draft day when he went fishing with his dad.
Yeah.
And I thought, this cat's a little different.
Yeah.
And that was their routine. That's what they did. They went fishing. And so that's what he did. He went fishing during the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And that has always stuck with me, that when he was drafted by the Browns in the first round, he wasn't in New York, he wasn't in the green room, he wasn't on the podium.
Nope.
He was on a boat with his dad fishing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
The Browns have, most of the Hall of Famers for the Browns played in the 50s and the 60s and before that. Ozzie Newsome is the most recent Hall of Famer. If you had to bet on current Brown making the Hall of Fame, who you voting for?
Joe Bitonio.
Earl?
Easily Bitonio.
It's harder. Zach actually.
I don't know about this easier stuff.
Zach Jackson just posted a story today on Bitonio being the next Hall of Famer. It's a little bit harder for guards than it is tackles.
Guards don't go in the Hall of Fame that much.
Yeah, but I think he's earned it.
I don't know that he's a lock for the Hall of
I
Fame.
don't think he's a lock, but you asked me who's next. I think
it's since '99 or current Browns team.
I mean, there's no other player since '99 that's going into the Hall of Fame
outside of probably Joe Bitonio.
Possibly.
Well, no, I mean, there are three guys in the current team that could potentially be Hall of Famers: Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett, and Bitonio.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll throw in Deshaun Watson too. He has a long way to go, but I'll throw him in as a possibility. But I'm just saying, nobody that's played for the Browns from '99 that's no longer on the team is ever sniffing the Hall of Fame.
No, of course not.
No.
Bitonio, I think, is the nearest to the end of his career. Therefore, he would be the first.
That's kind of why I said him too.
Yeah, but obviously Myles and Chubb. We've talked about it before. It's pitiful that the Browns could have three Hall of Famers and can't do anything with it.
Are they all? I would agree that if they all retired today, Bitonio's the most likely.
Yeah.
But I think when it's all said and done, I don't think he'll be the most likely.
Myles probably will be of the three.
Maybe. It depends how long Nick Chubb plays for.
Yeah.
Because Nick Chubb has played at a Hall of Fame level every year of his career.
Yeah. But
running backs burn out quicker.
It's so funny that you said that.
But Darrelle Davis got into the Hall of Fame, and he only did it for 5-6 years. But he's part of
It's funny you say that, man, because we talking about, we sitting here, we watching reels, right? And I always find people with these throwback reels of guys like Jamal Charles, Priest Holmes.
Who had a couple of great years.
Yeah, Chris Johnson. Guys like this, and it's like,
Johnson,
damn, man.
Yeah.
It was
2,000 yards.
David Johnson.
David Johnson.
Sean Alexander. Look how quickly Todd Gurley fell off a cliff.
Yep.
Yeah, so like
Kareem Hunt may be out of football.
It's one of those situations, man, to where like that's a good question. It's something to think about. If Nick Chubb retired today, would he be a retired?
No, he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer.
He wouldn't be.
No.
But I think
But he doesn't have to
he's
do
on
it
his
for that
way.
much longer. Like another 3 years at this level, he might be.
I think it's got to be more than 3.
Adrian Peterson set the bar so high.
Well, part of that is yes. But it's stupid that Darrelle Revis would get in because he won a Super Bowl. Like, that's just dumb.
Question, random thought. Do you think that, like, how the running back position has been treated in the NFL and how it's viewed now and how the game has changed so much, do you think the criteria for running backs getting into the Hall of Fame now becomes, do you have to view it with a slanted eye, I guess, so
I
to
think
speak?
all that you do, because it used to be, like, now, if you look at, same thing in the opposite direction. If you look at, like, quarterback stats now, they're so... If you go back and look at some of the quarterback, Barry Bradshaw, from Joe Namath,
They'd get cut today.
their stats, their statistics, you'd be like, how is this guy in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
Yeah.
They have more. I think Joe Namath and Bradshaw may have thrown more picks and touchdowns, or it's close. Nowadays, nobody's like that. None of the good players are anywhere close to that. So you're going to have guys that put up massive numbers, like a guy like Matt Ryan. Like, to me, I wouldn't even consider him for the Hall of Fame. Would you guys put Matt Ryan in the Hall of Fame?
I'd have to look at the numbers. But
I don't even care about the numbers because everybody's numbers are going to be so big
But
now.
when I hear Matt Ryan, do I think Hall of Fame? No.
No.
No,
And
I
by the
don't.
way, I don't think, I know this is, I'm in the minority of this. I don't think Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer. And I don't think you should be a Hall of Famer just because you won 2 Super Bowls.
I think Super Bowl is a team thing. That's just me. I know a lot of people say,
I mean, a quarterback goes a long way, especially now. It's more of a deal.
I agree with that, but like the whole team has to be moving in the same direction and accomplish that feat. So I wouldn't say he's a Hall of Famer because he's beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl.
But he's up there like in yardage all the time.
Yeah.
Although he's going to get passed by a lot of guys in the next decade, I bet.
Yeah.
All right, Anthony, what's going on?
Yeah, guys, before we move on, I want to tease tomorrow's show a little bit. We're going to be talking about our reactions to the game tonight. And you talk about the Hall of Fame, we got a top 5 for Joe Thomas tomorrow. Burl and I went together and put our heads together, and we're going to do that for you guys tomorrow, so make sure you're here at 11 a.m. And then next topic, we're talking about Kevin Stefanski got ranked 4th place in head coaches for the AFC North.
Yeah.
You guys think that's fair?
Yeah, there's no argument for him being
How
higher
can it
than
be
that.
anything other? Yeah.
I mean, you may like him personally, but there's literally no argument you could make that takes Kevin
So
Stefanski.
I know you think I'm a homer, but
Yeah.
I mean, I like him, but you can't make an argument
argument.
to do so. I mean, Zach Taylor, who a lot of people kind of underrated as a head coach, has took his team to the Super Bowl, 2 AFC Championship appearances.
Right.
We all know what John Harbaugh has. We all know his track record as a head coach.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season in his career,
Yeah.
and he has a Super Bowl. So, I mean, a Coach of the Year award is not enough to get you higher in the division when you consider everything else every head coach in this division has done.
And the Coach of the Year doesn't go to the best coach. It goes to the coach of the most surprising good team.
Usually.
Pretty much.
I mean, brand new coach with the Browns in a COVID year.
And and he did a good job. And I know Jason thinks he's a good coach, and I think he's a good coach too. And we're probably the minority opinion here in Cleveland, or at least it's 50-50. However, there is, how do I make an argument for him being better than the other guys?
No, you're not being reasonable, and that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
look who's in your division.
Right.
There's no shame in being 4th when you're up against two guys that are probably going to the Hall of Fame,
Right.
and another who's already been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
So,
I mean, if you want to argue that if Kevin Stefanski and Zach Taylor had the same roster that you think Stefanski would do better, okay, you can make that argument. I don't know how you'd prove that, though.
Right. You can't.
You can't prove that. So, I mean, the rankings are what they are, I guess, just to spice the conversation some.
Yeah.
I would say that Kevin Stefanski has a lot of potential that when we do this next year, he might be ranked number 2.
He might be 3rd.
He might be 3rd or 2.
Well, you better go to the Super Bowl, or at least the AFC Championship game, or he's not moving up.
So-
No, yeah.
Because I think a lot goes.
If they could go to the Super Bowl and he's still not moving beyond 3rd.
I mean, that could because of the division.
true.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
But I mean, 4th is where he is. 4th is 4th. But I think he's a really good head coach, and I think he gets a lot of unnecessary slack. I'm a guy like Jason, man. I'm a huge supporter of Kevin Stefanski, but I'm authentic. When he pisses me off, I let it be known he pisses me off. There's been times that he's done things that's overly frustrated me that just didn't make sense. But I like how he's even keeled. I like the fact that he doesn't really overreact to the negative or to the positive. And I think attitude is a true reflection of leadership.
Yeah.
And if you put out that type of energy, I think your players will follow it. I think he's a coach that does a great job of scheming up a game plan to get guys open. To your point, he's always had guys running open for the last 3 years. He's just never had a quarterback that can consistently get them the ball. I think that the players respect him and play hard for him, and I think he has to respect the owners and the general manager.
We weren't hearing that from G and Jay and Brad last year. They didn't agree with anyone agreed with anything you just said there. And in fact, they said there's no leadership. I think it's funny. In the first year when the Browns went to the playoffs with Stefanski, we all loved the fact that he was calm, cool, didn't get emotional. But last year when they sucked, a lot of people were angry that he wasn't.
They wanted to see him like losing his shit on the sideline.
Right. And that's not his style. And you know,
he does yell at the refs. They don't catch it, but he does. He does get on the refs.
Yeah, everybody does that.
But I'm
not
saying,
as much as like.
Is he tearing the locker room apart?
No.
Is he ripping the sideline apart? No. But he's fighting for his guys.
And he doesn't need to undress. Like some people have asked, he's got to rip his players publicly. He doesn't need to do that. But he should be ripping his players in the locker room, on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah,
I do agree with Jason though. He's not no beta male. I mean, Stefanski is going to talk his stuff, and he will let you know how he feel. But a lot of people might feel like, okay, I'm giving him too much praise for a coach who's not done much, but I can see below the surface with a few things. And if you're a guy that you got the command and respect of your team and your organization, that says a lot about your character. And
I want you to say this to G when he's back.
I've had this conversation with G plenty of times.
He has no command of the locker room.
Now, granted,
whatsoever.
I was a guy who last year I was pissed off that he didn't fire Joe Woods or Mike Prefer in the middle of the season. I was one of those guys screaming like, man, try to save the season.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to realize what Jason said from day one. They was punting. So it was no need for him to go out there and do that. But then I also think that it showed good leadership, not firing those guys just because they were in the midst of a storm. I used to be a supervisor of a 7-man department for the city of Cleveland. And to me, good leaders, they delegate to the people that they hire. You have to trust them to do their job, whether they do their job right or not. And then as a leader, you come back at the end of that, you assess the situation, and then you make the proper changes. And I thought he did a good job of doing that this offseason.
I disagree. I think they still should have fired. It doesn't matter now. I think it was a bad job of leadership to not fire. I think if the ship is sinking, you've got to say it shows that you care or you're trying to change something to fire him. But to me, that's neither here nor there at this point. We've moved on. But Anthony, we're going to move on from this topic because there's no argument taking Kevin Stefanski.
No, that's 100% fair.
Is anybody trying to argue in the chat?
Well, so I did actually. We have a PCC poll that I can read before we move on, and you're going to love it.
The poll question today: am I racist? Because apparently people were calling me racist after G and I had that debate the other day.
Yeah, well, I didn't make that the poll question today, but whenever we do a poll question, it's brought to you by PCC Airfoils. Looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits? PCC Airfoils is a leading manufacturer in Northeast Ohio, and all locations of PCC in Eastlake, Menor, Wickliffe, and Minerva are hiring for all positions starting at $18 and up. Plus, you can get a full benefit package, paid time off, and a signing bonus. You can apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more. So the poll today that Earl put up is, do you believe Kevin Stefanski is the fourth best coach in the AFC North? 36% said yes, and 64% of our fans said no. So I don't actually think they're on your side here, guys, where they're like, oh, yeah, it's cut dry, we're done.
I'd love to hear the arguments. Like, it's just it's my gut feeling.
So some comments here. Taylor hasn't made the Bengals better, just benefited from patient front office and great quarterback and wide receiver. People are saying Stefanski can say the same. So there's a 25 or so comments on here.
I don't think Zach Taylor's a great coach. I think he's all right. In reality, I think most head coaches are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 or 4 head coaches that are huge and great. I think there's 3 or 4 every year that are complete trash, Freddies. And most of them are in the middle. It depends on the talent you have.
I think that's a true statement, but I also think it's true 2 of those guys who's always in the top 4 just happen to be in the AFC North. It seems like John Harbaugh has been able to take whatever he's been given and make it competitive and at least scare other opponents to, hey, the Ravens can make the playoffs. It seems like whatever type of team that you give Mike Tomlin, he's able to go out there and at least make his team competitive. So
I think
they're difference makers.
I will say that I would put Harbaugh ahead of Tomlin personally. I think one of Tomlin's biggest flaws has been he's hired shitty assistants.
On the offensive side, they've had a lot of problems.
Have they? Name a coach. There's no coaches. Does Mike Tomlin have a coaching tree?
No, but my pushback will be the offensive coordinator, his name is Greg Roman, that used to be there.
Yeah.
It's not like he did anything to push the Ravens offense or Lamar Jackson forward either. So you can argue that both coaches think about it.
What do you mean?
So this is when he came over from San Francisco because he worked with Colin Kaepernick. He came over. He became the Ravens offensive coordinator.
Did Lamar win an MVP? With
Lamar won an MVP, but he didn't do much, in my opinion, to really progress Lamar forward as a quote-unquote quarterback. Because this is what people say when you talk about Lamar Jackson. He's a running quarterback, and he can't throw. Like, to me, good offensive coordinators can help you add on layers to your game.
I think, in my opinion, the two biggest problems with Lamar Jackson can't be coached. One, injury. Two, his ability, his decision making. I don't know that can be improved.
I think he has a big arm. I think he's accurate,
he can
and
throw.
I think that he hasn't had an offensive coordinator that actually put him in positions to show that, hey,
well, we're going to see that this year,
and you will see it.
We'll see if that works for him.
Because I would put Tomlin above. They both have a Super Bowl, right? Well, Harbaugh has 2 Super Bowl rings, right? So you can
Tomlin
argue
hasn't won a playoff game in forever.
You could argue that's the edge, but man, there's something about how competitive the NFL is and the AFC is in particular. He's never had a losing season as a coach, and it's not like he's always had a competent roster.
That's fair.
This would be a good question for Aditi in 20 minutes.
Oh, it is true. It is a good question.
We do have 20 minutes until Aditi. Some people in here are saying Zach Taylor deserves to be in the last.
Yeah, that's silly. That doesn't make any sense. All right, Anthony, what do we got next?
We got 32 and 32 next.
Yeah.
And today's 32 and 32 is Ethan Pocic and what he's going to do for the Browns this year. That's who we deemed this is number 26, number 25. I lost count.
I mean, you're producing today. You have to know what number.
Completely lost count.
It's number 25. It's number 25.
Again, you guys have put him too low. I don't know what you guys are doing. Ethan Pocic. You're telling me there's 24 more important people than Ethan Pocic?
You haven't seen the whole list.
So the way we made this list was I made a list of my guys, Earl made a list of his guys, Mike made a list of his guys, and Mike did some Excel math and made a final list averaging everybody out. So this is how they all landed.
Ethan Pocic is interesting because, Bill Callahan is a great offensive line coach, and when the Browns got Wyatt Teller, he was like a Pro Bowler his first year here. Mm-hmm. And since then, he's declined a little bit. Still good, but not as good. And so Ethan Pocic had done nothing in Seattle. He came here, he played like a Pro Bowler. And is he going to go backwards this year? I don't know. He got hurt, and that's been a problem on the Browns' offensive line. I think Ethan Pocic is really important. He was an excellent player for them last year.
Callahan's presence actually, I think, hurt him a little bit in free agency. It was the injuries in Callahan because it was sort of like the Callahan cheat code. Remember, we were talking like he was going to get a monster contract.
Right.
It never happened.
It never came.
No.
I think it was the injuries and the fact that they looked at that and said, well, that's the Callahan effect, and we don't have Bill Callahan here, so we're not going to make this big offer. Ethan wanted to come here because of that same thing, because of Callahan and because of the strength and conditioning staff of the Browns. He was really high on them. And obviously, we know how it worked out. He was a godsend for them last year. After who was it? Nick, right? Harris, thank you. Yeah. After Harris went down in the preseason opener,
I haven't heard his name mentioned at all.
I'm not sure he's making this team. I think he's too small to play guard. So he may go from starting center last year to cut this year. I don't know. Maybe there's a spot for him, but Pocic has taken over that spot. And I've said before, he is like a human eclipse. He's an enormous person. Sometimes your centers are a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
This guy's huge. And when he shakes your hand, he envelops your entire, I feel like a child standing.
Yeah.
He's massive and massively important to what they do, obviously. And particularly you mentioned Teller in the run game.
Yeah.
These guys are just bull rushing guards and centers and really getting off the ball. And I think that there's a little bit of question on the right side with Conklin. Mm-hmm. Teller didn't have the year that he wanted to have.
And he was hurt again.
I think these guys know this could be it for them. One more bad year and they could be gone. So for Pocic, I I think he probably could be a little bit higher, but I don't think they have him. I thought
I keep forgetting you guys have coaches in there too.
yeah, they have coaches. I don't know if you have GM owners or anything like that.
GM is in there. I don't think Jimmy or D is in there.
Okay.
Oh my God!
But that's
Thank
probably about right for him. I think maybe a couple spots low, but not too bad.
I mean, I think he's very important to the Browns' overall success. I mean, he's the center of the team. His chemistry with Deshaun Watson is very important. I think he's a highly intelligent young man. A lot of people talk about the quarterback coming to the line of scrimmage and making line checks and being able to recognize what's going on. And I think he's Deshaun Watson's second pair of eyes and ears when it comes to understanding what's going on the football field. He proved that, he is a good football player, and we have a good offensive line coach who was able to get the most out of him, as you said, that we got with Wyatt Teller, because it's not like Wyatt Teller was in high regards when he got here. And so, I think that his overall presence is important. As far as Nick Harris go, I think he will make this team as a backup center. I kind of disagree with Jason a little bit, just for the simple fact I remember during the COVID year, whether due to injury or COVID itself, he kind of played guard in a couple games, and he didn't do too bad. And one of the things that I remember Andrew Berry saying about Nick Harris when they drafted him is they thought he was a center that was smart and that was versatile. And so when you talk about a lot of these depth guys, it's the versatility, I think, that's able to keep them around.
Well, you keep what? 9 offensive linemen usually? 8? I can't remember what most teams keep. The starting 5. We know that James Hudson's going to be on the team. That's 6. The kid, what's his name? They just drafted from Ohio State.
DeJuan Jones.
Oh, DeJuan Jones. Yeah.
He's going to be on the team. That's 7. So Nick Harris, I mean, you got to, and those guys are both tackles. So you're going to need probably 2 interior linemen backups, and Harris is competing.
Harris, Forbes, Michael Dunn.
Right.
1 or 2 of those guys are going to make it, and one's not.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. He has shown some promise, but he's been hurt a lot, which is a recurring theme with the members of this Browns offensive line, not named Joel Bitonio, and so. They already have an injury-prone offensive line. I don't know if I want to keep an injury-prone backup.
Well, to your point, the same thing that make you laugh, make you cry, right? When you got a developer and coach like Bill Callahan, it's almost like the Guardians. You feel a little bit more comfortable moving on from a pitcher, per se, in this case a center, because you believe that you can scour whether the waiver wire, free agency, or next year in the draft, like they did this year with the center from Ohio State, and get you a developmental guy that you trust your offensive line coach to
he
develop.
Probably makes it. What's it? Wexler,
Wepler, or something like that. So
there's also practice squad guys. These guys can go to practice squad. They come up with phantom IR injuries, and
but to get a guy on the practice squad, he's got to clear through waivers.
I do want to ask you a question. I've been hearing this name. I think it's Tyrone Wheatley Jr. Is his father Tyrone Wheatley, who used to play for the Raiders? It was like a fullback for the Raiders or something.
He went to Michigan. Tyrone Wheatley went to Michigan.
Yeah. I hear his name
I haven't looked it up. I believe so, but
what are the odds that he's a Tyrone Wheatley Jr. and it's not that?
I mean, Kenny Lofton Jr. has nothing to do with Kenny Lofton.
You don't hear much about offensive linemen, but when you do, it's like, okay.
Know that, by the way.
That's not.
I didn't know that.
I'm hearing his name a lot, and I know Jason, you was out there. Is this a young man that has an opportunity to earn a roster spot? It seems like they like him.
Wheatley?
Yeah.
I think he's probably more of a practice squad guy. I could be wrong. I think honestly, I think we're too early to know. We just haven't seen enough.
There's a lot.
It's too this is the Hall of Fame game. It's like when it's warm in March and you think spring's here, and it's really not.
Right.
The Hall of Fame game has thrown off the timing of this.
That's true.
To where we are so early in this still.
Right.
That it's really just hard to say.
Especially
with linemen, there could be injuries in camp.
Right. Especially with Browns linemen.
I'm trying to see if it's his father, Earl. I can't find it on Wikipedia.
I'd imagine it is. He went to. He played at Michigan. Junior did. Wheatley Jr. did.
So it's funny story, right? I was working for Euclid Municipal Court when I was going through the interview process to get this job.
Yeah.
And somebody had came in and paid a ticket, and I looked at his name, and it said Najee Davenport Jr. And I was like, it's a dude who used to play in the NFL named Najee Davenport. He said, yeah, that's my dad.
Yeah.
I said, no stuff. I said, I'm like, you born here? He like, yeah, because I know Davenport spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool.
See, there you go. So it probably is his dad, I would guess. I feel like we should know this already. But
I just assumed it was, but I don't want to say yes without actually having
true,
looked
because
it up.
I assumed it was Kenny Lofton's son.
Yeah, it's
I did
his
too.
kid. It's his kid.
As a kid.
It is his kid.
Yeah.
And, all right. And what position does he play? I don't even know.
Line.
Wasn't he a running back, the original?
No, his dad was a running back.
His dad
Yeah.
was a running back.
His dad
That's
was
what
a
I'm saying.
beast.
The original Tyrone
Yeah,
Wheatley.
like I know you're not a video game like head, but like
Yeah.
like his dad was one of those dudes who got busy on Madden.
Yeah, all right.
He got
His
busy.
ahead,
kid's
Anthony. You got
a
something?
tackle. His kid's a tackle.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that we just hit 25,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it's a huge milestone for us. And I just want to thank everyone and tell everyone, keep subscribing, tell your family, tell your friends. We're going to have a lot of Browns content planned out from today till the end of the season, and you don't want to miss any of it. Get the notifications. So, guys, we have 10 minutes until Aditi comes on. And I didn't have anything planned because I thought our Kevin Stefanski thing was going to be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But we talked about Jonathan Taylor the other day, not
Yeah.
getting his money. They don't want to pay him his money. Did you guys see what the owner of the Colts is paying $20 million to do today?
No.
What is he doing?
He's paying $20 million to move an orca across. You can take tag board, Steve. To move an orca across the country, but he won't pay his star running back.
What?
I saw it this morning and
Why
I thought it
is
was
he
insane.
paying that money to move an orca?
So I read the article. He just thinks it's a good idea to do.
What? I don't even understand.
But it's not a good idea to pay a
That can't
24-year-old
be. I mean,
star
one
running
has
back.
nothing to do with the other.
It's
but
Barstool. Are we sure it's true?
I mean, what?
I've seen multiple
that
reports
can't
on
be
this.
True. What are you talking about? What? Why would Jim Irsay be moving an orca?
I mean, he's a billionaire, man. He play billionaire games.
Listen,
do what he
He
wants.
wants to
let me
release it
take
into
you
its
behind the
natural
scenes.
habitat,
Anthony is
but he won't pay
panicking
Jonathan
right now
Taylor.
because he feels like we have nothing to talk about for the next 10 minutes till Aditi comes.
I thought it was funny, and I was going to include it into overtime.
Anthony, there's 800 subjects we can come up with. Don't worry about it. Don't panic. We'll be able to talk for 10 minutes. There's plenty of things to talk about. But I need to know more about this. First of all, this can't be good for the orca whale. The orca.
Here's a story from a month ago.
All right, what
Colts
happened?
owner and philanthropist in the lead. Colts owner and philanthropist Jim Irsay said he is still working on bringing the orca whale Takati back to the Salish Sea. I'm butchering these names.
Who cares? Go
And
ahead.
he's personally helping to fund the effort.
Is this good for the animal?
We will get it done. I would imagine they're not trying to kill him.
Well, you never know.
Somebody said he's
like
doing
shooting
this.
animals. They get their rocks off on them.
We will
Somebody in chat said he's doing this because the orca isn't a cap hit. So
we will get it done, and we're trying to get it done sooner than later. Irsay said on the Pat McAfee show. Again, this is last month.
Okay.
Takati, the endangered southern resident killer whale, was taken from her native waters 50 years ago and shipped to the Miami Seaquarium, where she performed under the name Lolita for decades.
Oh my God! They changed the orca's name.
I will ask this question though, because
Yeah.
I think me and Anthony talked about it earlier this week.
That's
The Kansas City Chiefs came up as a name as a team that wanted to potentially look into trading for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs was also used as an example of a team of why, quote unquote, the running back position is not important.
Yeah.
Because they won the Super Bowl with a rookie behind them.
By the way, let me clarify something before we continue this. Okay, I don't think anybody's saying the running back position is not important. That's what's being screwed around here. The star running backs are trying to say the running back position is not important. The league is not saying that. The league is saying it's not important to pay running backs a ton of money because there's other running backs that could do the job. It's not that the position is not important. It's the having one bell cow is not as important. Teams like to split carries. It keeps guys fresher.
I agree with that, but I think that it's different strokes for different folks. I think that instead of just looking at, he's a running back, he's a running back, he's a running back, and I can get this running back that can do similar things to you at a lesser value.
Yeah.
That's good business, but at the same time, I think you can also trip yourself up into a bad situation.
You can.
And I think that you need to look at each player.
But I don't think the Colts are going to trade him.
But no, I don't either. But
Yeah.
I'm speaking on the position overall.
Yeah.
I think you need to look at it case by case. I know me and Jason disagree, but maybe I read too much into what Andrew Berry said. But
Yeah.
to me, it seems like that he's looking at Nick Chubb as Nick Chubb and not Nick Chubb that plays running back. I don't think he's going to get that. What is it? His cap hit 11
$16
million,
million next
16
year.
million.
He ain't getting that.
I think that his contract is going to be restructured, and he's going to be extended. But as far as this particular situation goes, you got a guy in Jonathan Taylor who's going into the last year of his contract, and Irsay saying he want a high round pick for him in return. You're not going to get that because whoever trades for, if you trade a first or a second round pick for him, that means you're signing him to a new deal.
Yeah, and nobody's trading the first round.
And nobody's doing that.
I saw something on the internet about.
Although the Niners gave up a lot to get McCaffrey last year.
Different
They did.
back, he can catch passes out of the backfield.
And he can block.
Yeah, but McCaffrey's the best in the league at it. There was a funny thing on the internet about, a fake conversation where Irsay looks at Taylor and says, "I can't trade you. You're too valuable." And he says, "Then pay me." And he says, "No."
Right.
Like that's kind of where they're at. Is no, we can't lose you. You're too valuable to what we do, and we wouldn't get enough in return for trading you. Well, then pay me. Well, no. Well, why not?
I mean, if I were the Colts, I would trade him if I could get a first round pick.
Who's giving up a first round pick?
Well, probably nobody, but I would do it if I could get a first round pick.
I could see a team.
What good is Jonathan Taylor?
I mean, maybe the Chiefs or the Bills give up a first round pick. And probably not.
I was going to say, like, I was going to say a second round pick. I think the Bills, the Chiefs, and maybe the Dolphins are three teams that will probably give up a second round pick.
Why would anybody give up that when you could just sign Dalvin Cook?
I think Jonathan Taylor is better than Cook.
Is he?
Yes.
He got less miles on him. He's 24 years old.
But to your point,
I don't think he's that. Jonathan Taylor was hurt last year. But Dalvin Cook has been great every year in the NFL.
But to your point, also,
yeah,
what's the gap between those two?
Not
and
much.
Why would you?
I would agree that Taylor's better, but not by much.
So, to that point, why would you give him a first round pick
for him
if the gap isn't that wide? And you just go sign.
Austin Eckler wanted to be traded. Reportedly, nobody offered anything. Guy's one of the best backs in the league. Nobody's trading for Jonathan Taylor. That's why I said if I could get it I wouldn't trade it. I don't even think anybody would give him a second round pick for him. Because why? If you're the Chiefs, would you rather have Dalvin Cook in a second round pick or Jonathan Taylor? I think it's a no-brainer.
Dalvin Cook sounds like he's going to New York.
It doesn't.
I mean, I know. I'm just.
But only because the Chiefs may not be interested.
Yeah.
It's hard to trade him.
So
now.
why would if they're not interested in Dalvin Cook? Why would they be interested in Jonathan Taylor? It doesn't make.
I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I know Darren Smith. I can ask him. He's probably watching the show right now.
Yeah, that's true. Darren, text me or send.
Darren, holla at us, man. What the Chiefs gonna do?
It would be hard to trade him now because what's your avenues to replace him if you're the Colts?
But they're going to stink anyway, so maybe they don't care. Maybe they're going to tank.
Well, then you are. Then you're really tanking.
Although they drafted a quarterback, so.
But Jason, here's the weird thing. If I'm the head coach, this is the head coach that just came from Philly.
Yep.
Why would I want to trade? Why would I?
You don't.
You don't. Like Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor is the perfect marriage to have something similar to what you ran offensively with the Philadelphia Eagles. And to me, it's like the starter kit, right? So whatever riffraff he have with the owner, man, if I'm the head coach, I'm like, hey, I need y'all to kind of get this settled down because I need this dude.
It'll be fine. He's not holding out or anything like that. He's on his rookie contract still. So what? Irsay should just shut the hell up. He's an idiot.
I told you, he's crazier than vintage Dan. Like when Dan was.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Crazier than that?
Oh yeah. Wow. Oh yeah. I mean, he hasn't written a letter, but he's.
Do you think when Dan wrote that letter, he thought it was true?
Of course. He spent all day writing that letter. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
That was not the first version. That letter was heavily edited.
You ever seen the music video "Stan" by Eminem?
No.
Oh man, I'm gonna show you after the show. But that's what every time I think back, it just reminds me of a pissed off Dan Gilbert, all in his feelings. Just writing away. Somebody should have told him, man, put the pen down.
Yeah,
put the pen down.
I'm sure there were people telling him that.
He was at the Sun Valley Conference for billionaires when all that went down. And the Cavs didn't have any contact with LeBron in the days leading up to that, but they had family. I think I was told it was Gloria was sort of the conduit between LeBron and the family. And Gloria stopped taking their calls the morning of the decision.
Right.
So they knew. And he got to work on that typewriter banging away. And he had all day. He spent all day on that letter, and it was heavily edited. Can you imagine what the first version? I said
I probably called him every name in the book.
I said that first version's got to be out there somewhere.
Oh, God,
I want
I'd
it.
love to see
I
that.
want to find it.
I want an athletic expose on that original letter. You got to find. He's probably got that. With some.
Somebody's got that.
He's probably got that in a safe.
Somebody's got that.
with all kinds of evil stuff that he has in there.
Spent all day working on that.
Oh my God!
That's like
speaking of which, we haven't talked about it in the last couple of days. I'm sure you guys talked about it last week. What happened with Bronny was very scary, obviously for his family.
Awful.
Seems like he's doing all right. Have you heard anything?
No,
new?
I haven't poked around on that.
God, that's horrifying.
That's not my world anymore.
Yeah.
But I said my heart broke for the guy. Like,
You know Bronny a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit. And everyone, you look at these people as bigger, larger than life, and supersized.
Right.
We don't really look at them as humans. That's a dad. Like my first thought was, being a dad, I can't imagine that as him. And I don't know where he was. Was he
so scary?
Was LeBron in LA at the time? Was he in Miami? Was he halfway? Who knows where he was?
I know. Go ahead.
And to know that your son is in a health episode, and maybe he was in LA at the time. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't keep up with him that closely anymore. But just the helpless feeling.
Following his calendar?
Yeah, no. I took him off tweet alert the day I left the Cavs beat.
So 2 years ago,
I'm glad he's okay though.
I know of a young man who played basketball for Shaw High School 2 years ago, and he had suffered some cardiac arrest during the game. Ended up getting rushed to the hospital. They discovered an issue. That's something that my daughter is a young athlete, and I know another young lady, 13, 14 years old, at basketball practice had a heart condition. She passed away.
Oh my God!
You're starting to see this and hear this a lot with young athletes and this cardiac arrest. I know it's like when I heard it, my father died of a heart attack. So anytime I hear anything like that, it just makes me uneasy. It makes me uncomfortable. And so I'm glad to know that he's okay. And I always think about my daughter. Everybody knows what my daughter wants to do for a living. And it's like people who have that type of passion to pursue that type of career choice, I think they don't realize how necessary they are. To actually want to save lives, to actually want to embed yourself and make all the sacrifices to put yourself in that field to save people like Bronny. Like, it's a scary thing, man. Like, life is short. And that's why you got to appreciate, like, each moment, each day. Because you could be in great shape and drop dead just like that. So
you could be in terrible shape and live for a long time, hopefully. Or maybe not. I don't know.
No, very true. That's very true.
Let's hope. You don't see a lot of fat senior citizens. Go ahead.
What's wrong?
What was that, Anthony? Aditi's
Yeah,
ready?
so we have Aditi, and before we get Aditi in, I just want to remind everybody that Earl, Mike, and I do a podcast on the weeknights where it's called Behind the Glass. And sometimes, who knows, we might talk about orcas and transferring them across, or we might talk about sports. It's called Behind the Glass. We love the support that you guys give to us, and make sure you subscribe so you get the notifications when we go live for that. And without further ado, Aditi.
Aditi Kinkabwala of CBS. And we haven't seen her in a while. I just talked to her this week, so I've seen her. Well, I haven't
There
seen her.
she is. Welcome
Hi.
back.
you
Oh,
doing?
I love the serenade.
How you
Keep
doing?
going. Keep the singing.
No,
Keep singing?
that's it. That's all I
he's
got. Welcome back.
How you doing?
Great. A little harried, but I played a good hour of tennis today.
Oh.
Can I tell you that I'm playing a lot of tennis, and I've picked up golf, which I just don't
Oh,
understand.
that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
Why is it obnoxious?
Golf is such an obnoxious
I don't
sport.
get it. Is it even a sport? Does it count as a sport?
No.
Or is it just like an act of frustration?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. By the way, when you first came on and said I thought for a second, in my mind, when you said you were harried, I thought you said you were hairy.
That's what I thought.
Why would you bring that up?
I actually got 3 inches off. I just got this. Supposed to be my season due,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit of a mess. Sorry, that's the hairy
All right.
part is when you're running
Aditi,
around.
I have the most important question for you.
Okay.
This is the question of the football season. If you had to pick a member of the Cleveland Browns that was most likely an alien, like from out of space, who would it be? If you said, that guy's got to be an alien, who
What
would it
is
be?
wrong with you?
But does an alien necessarily have a negative connotation, or just somebody who is so against the grain and norm of what you would expect?
I don't think it has to be necessarily positive or negative. I think it could be however you take it. Yes. I don't
Well,
think
you know what?
I don't think it's
So
a bad thing.
the first alien that I think of is
Yeah.
E.T. It's not even a Men in Black alien. It's
you go.
E.T.
Right.
And E.T. was so lovable that Nick Chubb is who I would pick.
I think Nick Chubb's
how I
a good
did that?
choice.
I just
would
feel
take
like,
Myles Garrett.
again,
Myles Garrett. You see
because
some-
he's like otherworldly.
Otherworldly.
Because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
That's not.
I could see that.
That's not normal.
He's a freak. Earl, alien.
But I'd argue that Nick Chubb is otherworldly too, especially in personality.
Oh, for sure.
All things considered.
I mean, I've seen the barbell bend. It looks like it's a piece of rubber on those squats that he does.
I guess I will have to go with Nick Chubb.
You're going with Nick Chubb also?
Nick Chubb.
But I mean, Myles Garrett does not look like he is of this earth. I mean, I still remember meeting him when he was drafted, and it's like, really? Like, people are just born looking like that? Okay.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Can I take that back?
Who you going with?
I go David Njoku. It just dawned on me it was 0 degrees outside, and he was outside with no shirt on.
Well, he's crazy.
Well, so
yeah, but you know, Ryan Shazier did that all the time. T.J. Watt does that. I feel like it's all this whole psychological. I don't know that that's that unusual.
And I would say half.
And I think Njoku likes his abs so much, he'll just take every opportunity to show them off.
Yes.
A serious note, we were having a little bit of a debate. Who's the better head coach? Mike Tomlin or Harbaugh, if you had to choose between those two. And I know you know both of them very well. If you had to pick between the two, I went with Harbaugh, Earl went with Tomlin. I don't think Jason made an opinion. Who's your pick between the two? You had to choose.
Tomlin.
He's going Tomlin. Who you going? Harbaugh or Tomlin, if you had to pick?
You know, I feel like this is an apples to oranges thing, and it's almost more like who would motivate you better or who would fit your team better. You know, so like when we talk about with the Browns, Jim Schwartz versus Joe Woods, in some ways, Jim Schwartz was a much better personality fit for what these Browns needed than Joe Woods was. So to that point, for me personally, the better fit for me would be John Harbaugh. But it's hard, you know, these are both guys that get the most out of who they have. You know, John Harbaugh team is almost never, ever, ever flat. They always show up ready to play. A Mike Tomlin team, whether he's starting Duck Hodges or a future Hall of Fame quarterback, is always competitive. And Adam, you and I have had this conversation a million times. Guys, I'm so sorry. I have repeatedly asked for that to be silenced, and it is not silenced, but hopefully any moment now, unless you want me to take a break and go ask for that.
What is that? We didn't hear anything.
You know, we're just going to keep going. Oh, it's just getting worse, isn't it? But in any case,
that was the only thing we heard. We hadn't heard anything before you mentioned it.
Hey, Aditi, I see the mom look. I see it. I just got scared. You know when your mom is trying to smile through something when she's really like, you better turn it off right now.
All right. Okay.
Go ahead.
So back to this. You know, the Mike Tomlin playoff run really, 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 really bothers me. Really irks me that in the last dozen years, there are only 3 playoff wins to show for that. And there was that 6-year spell when they had the best wide receiver in the game in Antonio Brown, one of the best running backs in the game in Le'Veon Bell, a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, one of the best offensive lines in the game, great tight end, and a defense littered with first-round picks. And in those 6 years, they have exactly 1 trip to the AFC title game to show for it. That makes me feel like significant disappointment. You know, like you've gotten there, but it's not good enough to get there. Like at some point, it's not enough to just have a 500 record. At some point, you've got to win playoff games. John Harbaugh, I really, really, really admire the way that he completely was willing to flip the switch and change his offense the year that he went to Lamar Jackson. I mean, you're talking about in the middle of the season, Joe Klecko, he makes the switch and completely upends what they're doing. And you think about coaches being really sort of slave to what they do, to their scheme, to the way they want to run things. I mean, even when it was such a big deal with Odell Beckham Jr. and how he fit in the Browns offense, I mean, he just didn't fit what they were doing. So maybe you should change what you're doing to fit this dynamic player. But that's not the way that things were done there. And John Harbaugh is sort of the opposite of that, so I appreciate that. Again, I mean, it's splitting hairs. I know I'm just talking a lot and filibustering, but like this is, you know, what's funny? I just went to talk to the Pitt football players about dealing with the media and best practices and being a good teammate. And the first thing I told them was, if you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to. Just keep talking. That's what I'm doing.
To your point, Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl early in his career with a guy who's going to now be a Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger. Much as I detest him, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Whereas Harbaugh won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, who is never going to sniff the Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's a big difference.
But also, you know, the Steelers did the first time that Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl. yes, Ben Roethlisberger had a tremendous playoff run until then, but they won with an amazing defense and a great run game. And when John Harbaugh won, he had an amazing defense, too.
That's fair. That's fair.
And isn't that a part of it, is getting the most out of every player that you have and pulling the potential? And you know what? That year, see, this is another thing about John Harbaugh that is a check in his column that I really appreciate. And it's funny because I brought it up a lot last year when the Steelers were having so much sort of angst over their offensive coordinator, and especially with the fan base. The year that John Harbaugh won the Super Bowl with Joe Klecko, remember, very late in the season, he let go his good friend, Cam Cameron, and installed Jim Caldwell as the offensive coordinator. And it was Jim Caldwell that connected with Joe Flacco so much better, that Joe Flacco started playing so much better under. John Harbaugh recognized, midstream, late in the season, whatever, we need a major change here. And Mike Tomlin still hasn't done that with Matt Canada. But, of course, to be fair, I think that ownership has a lot to do with that, and it's not as much Mike Tomlin's decision. But, I mean, that's another. Sometimes being a coach is being willing to make a change. If something's not working, sometimes you just have to rip it up.
Speaking of that, Aditi, we heard Jimmy and Dee Haslam address the media at the Greenbrier, and they both talked about that the hirings of Bubba Ventrone and Jim Schwartz that they thought would significantly help Kevin Stefanski. Now we know what Schwartz and Ventrone brings to the actual position group, but what do you think and the impact that they were going to have on Kevin Stefanski himself this year?
You know, the Jim Schwartz piece, I'm so excited about. I'm really eager to see tonight. Like, granted, look, because a lot of people, oh my gosh, this is my Browns baby. Sorry.
That's the Browns baby?
Please.
Hey, tell her, here we go, Brownies, here we go.
Football team. Who's your favorite football team?
Big Brother.
Big Brother is your favorite football team? No, who's your favorite football team? Where were you born?
Cleveland.
Cleveland. Okay. Can you let Mommy finish talking for a minute, please? Yeah. Can you?
Full.
Okay. She's full. Great.
That's awesome.
I was worried because I was trying to get lunch on the table before I came here. Can you see me sweating? My goodness. Talk about why I haven't been on the show for 6 months. Probably because of that.
You're rusty.
Anyway. Okay, so tonight we are not going to see completely significant defensive schematical things, right? But we are going to see a mindset. We are going to see how these guys attack. We are especially going to get a look at that young, new interior defensive line. And I think so much of what I want to see is a certain level of aggressiveness and focus and that accountability that in some ways we felt was missing a year ago. And that is the hallmark of who Jim Schwartz is. So when you talk about what can he do for Kevin Stefanski, we know that in a lot of ways, Kevin Stefanski is a very, I don't want to say easygoing like a knock, but a very level guy. Kevin Stefanski is the type of person who, you know, doesn't let things very visibly bother him, doesn't have major histrionics on a sideline. I mean, I've never seen the guy throw a clipboard or, you know, anything like that. But so maybe this is a club that needs a little bit more of that fire and that juice. And is Jim Schwartz a guy who not only gives that to his defense, but maybe gives Kevin a little bit of freedom to do a little bit more of that, or take the pressure off of him to try to be that when he's not really that. Although I have been told that he can get angry in private. I've asked him repeatedly, like, does he get angry at home? Does he yell at his kids? He's never really answered that question.
I think that
Can you tell from me? Can you tell? Like, am I a yeller? Do you think I yell at my kids?
No, you don't.
I can tell you're angry.
You yell at your husband, but not your kids.
I can tell you're angry.
That too.
Is that a vacuum cleaner or food processor? What was that going off?
No, that was actually a vacuum cleaner.
A vacuum?
Apologies, yeah. Apologies.
No, it's
My
awesome.
I'm sweating.
It's awesome.
Wow, guys.
This is real life. It's great.
I guess for me, I can just hear my mom as soon as this camera go off. As soon as they turn this camera off,
You better run.
Sorry. We're all good. We're good.
That's great. I just like watching you sweat. It doesn't happen very often. You're normally as cool and calm as Kevin.
Yeah, right.
I try. It's funny. It's how like being on a football field won't throw me. Somebody being nasty to me. Someone just replayed. Do you guys remember when? It's so funny. This is when it was the Tyrod Taylor Baker Mayfield thing, and Anthony Lima like went off on me on morning radio, and I gave it back to him. Do you remember this? It was like 5 years ago.
I certainly remember that.
Yeah, he was working there at the time. I vaguely remember it.
Yeah, so it was this like really big deal, and for some reason I got this alert that like someone had written about it or talked about it. I'll never forget, like as soon as I hung up, Todd Haley was messaging me, "You go girl, I'm so proud of you."
Wow.
But it's funny, it's like moments like that don't make me nervous, don't make me start sweating, but something like this, yeah, I'm
The kids coming.
Let's go back to the football. Don't you have another thing for me?
I do,
Jerome
Aditi. So I know you were able to be around Deshaun Watson a little bit last season. I'm not sure how much you've heard or how much you've seen with your own two eyes, but what's the word on Deshaun Watson, and what's the feel about Deshaun Watson going into his first full season as the Cleveland Browns quarterback compared to last year?
I mean, what I'm hearing is sort of what you expect out of anybody in year two with a club, and it's just the level of comfort. It's the level of ownership. It's the communication. It's the, even hearing Alex Van Pelt talk about the way Deshaun Watson is now going through his reads and when necessary tucking the ball and running, and the designed runs, and his ease and comfort with what the guys in front of him, what their tendencies are, their comfort with him. You should, I mean, I have no problem saying this, we should all see a massive, massive, significant jump in this year. There's a reason he was paid what he was paid. There's a reason that he was so highly sought after despite the baggage and everything else that came with him. And in many ways, we gave him a mulligan last year. We said, okay, you were out of football for a year, and okay, you sat for 13 weeks, and okay, the whole team had to sort of readjust in some ways to you. And it's even the command of the huddle. I remember Darrelle Bevel, who is currently the Dolphins quarterbacks coach, but he was Russell Wilson's first coach. He was Brett Favre's coach. He was Trevor Lawrence's first coach. He's been with quarterbacks every which way. And he was telling me the one thing that we sort of don't think about is the command of the huddle. And you don't think about it when you are a rookie who's, a 21-year-old wet behind the ears college kid coming and suddenly having to command a huddle with all these grown men. And you don't think about it when somebody is new to a team and you haven't really built any base of experience with them. And so in a lot of ways, Deshaun Watson can think that he can just step into a huddle and like, okay, I've done it enough that I command a huddle, but that's not really the way that it works. And so I think that whole team piece of it, the whole comfort, all of that, I'm hearing, at least, I'll see for myself, we'll all see to some degree next week, I hope, that piece is significant. And I don't think that you can undersell that part of it. You know what? That's another difference between Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. Mike Tomlin hates all this, like, as he calls it, like the woo-woo emotional stuff. Like, he doesn't want to think about those intangibles. But John Harbaugh acknowledges that they are very much a part of the game.
All right. I changed my mind. I'll take Harbaugh.
You convinced me into it.
Just nobody send this tape to Mike Tomlin. Like I said, I'm hedging. That's just who you are.
What's a successful season this year for the Browns? Does it have to be playoffs or everybody gets blown out of the building? Or what, in your mind, is a successful year?
I can't speak to what Jimmy and Dee Haslam would judge as, okay, we need change or not. But I think that any team should say that the playoffs are the first level of success. Isn't that why you play the game? Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's enough to sit here and say, oh, if we get 9 wins, that's good enough. Or, oh, if we beat the Steelers twice, that's good enough. Like, that's not what the benchmark is here. You play this game for one reason, to get into the playoffs, to hopefully win a Super Bowl. So, like, anything below that, how is that successful? And now I'll bring that back to Mike Tomlin. My very first year in Pittsburgh was my first year. My second year in Pittsburgh, the Steelers started 0-4 and somehow finished the year 8-8. And so they had a much better second half of the run. So I remember phrasing a question at the end of the year post-season press conference to Mike Tomlin, something about still somehow finishing the season successfully. And Mike Tomlin yelled at me in front of everybody, and he said, "You're using the word success. I don't think this is a success. Since when is 8-8 a success?"
That's right.
There you go.
Yep.
And it depends on your standards, right? I mean, the Steelers have higher standards because they've had so much success. He's 100% right. That's not a successful season. And yeah,
but the Browns have to raise. Yeah, Adam,
Right.
come on. The Browns have to raise their standards. Enough of this. It's enough of like, well, it's the Browns. Well, they're graded on a curve because it's the Browns. Or, well, you know, like a winning record is enough. No. The Browns have a first-class facility. They have first-class coaches. They have first-class players. Let's go. Raise the standard.
That's it.
Playoffs.
And it doesn't, like, there's a part of you that says, well, the AFC is as tough as it's ever been. So even if they're really good, they might not make the playoffs. But that's not an excuse. You've got to get it done. And it starts with Kevin Stefanski getting, along with Watson, getting Watson back to being the player that was in Houston. Because if they can't get that player back, they can't win, and they can't be over 500, and they can't make the playoffs because the AFC's too good. Deshaun Watson's got to play like an all-pro player.
Yes, and don't forget the defense, though. I mean, this is a team that 2 years ago was a top 5 defense that started last year saying, oh, our goal is to be number 1. And then what happened?
Right.
And then you clearly invested a lot of sort of capital in trying to improve that defensive front. You've brought in a new defensive coordinator. And when you're going up against the likes of Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and a much, much, much improved Kenny Pickett, who, have you all seen the Kenny Pickett-George Pickens connection?
Oh, enough with Kenny Pickett already. I got your boy.
There'll never be enough of Kenny Pickett.
Peter Schrager going on and on and on about Kenny Pickett. I responded to his tweet today. I'm like, Schrager, enough with Kenny Pickett. He's freaking Mac Jones. Let's just stop it. They're slappies.
Stop it. No,
They're
he's
slappies.
Not. No,
he's a slappy. So is Mac Jones.
No.
All right, I'm sorry, Petey. Maybe he's Andy Dalton. Maybe he's Andy Dalton. We'll give you that.
I did see something on Twitter of Kenny Pickett taking I think a quarterback sweep. Yeah. And the caption said, is that Kenny Pickett or Lamar Jackson? I just shook my head.
It's practice. Who cares?
He is more athletic. You remember the fake slide. Y'all remember the fake slide.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, give him a little credit.
I give him credit for the fake slide.
And I did. I'll tell you this, too. I just played a charity softball game with him a few weeks ago, and this is the second year in a row that we played in this game. He hits multiple home runs every year, and I don't know what he's not good at. Like, seriously.
Quarterback.
Oh, God.
I couldn't hear the part of that because Anthony was talking about
Oh, she said she doesn't know what he's not good at. And I said quarterback.
Didi, I do have a follow-up Deshaun Watson question based on the conversation that we all had here. So a lot of us on this panel believe that Deshaun Watson will be good again. Jason said he's not sure if he has it to be great again. Do you believe that Deshaun Watson has it to be great again?
Yes. No hesitation. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And if he isn't, I don't know what the excuse is.
No.
Here's my thing.
Anymore. It's not the offensive line. It's not having a great run game. It's not having a scheme. I mean, he's had so much input in the scheme. It's being built around what he likes to do in a lot of ways, or being tailored to what he likes to do. There's no excuses at this point. When you're paid that amount of money, you are expected to be that great. Sorry. This is just my family.
This is great.
What were you going to say, Jason? Go ahead.
No, here's my thing with Deshaun. I think absolutely he could get back to being great. I don't know that he will. It's been 3 years since we've seen him be great. He's gone through a lot in those 3 years. And I just don't know. I don't know if he's going to come out on the other side of all this the same guy he was before in terms of his quarterback play on the field. And I'm not saying he's not going to be great. I'm just saying I'm pretty confident he can be a good NFL quarterback, certainly better than anything they've had before. I'm not convinced yet that he's going to be back to the level that he was. That's all.
Well, and that's the magic of why the games play out, right? And I think that that's a fair amount of skepticism. I'm just saying that I'll take the over on that I think he can.
Well, we hope so. I mean, obviously you hope so because good is not good enough. Even though it would be better than anything they've had, he can't be good. The AFC is so stacked with great quarterbacks that you got to keep up. And they didn't trade 3 first-round picks plus for a good quarterback. They traded it for a great quarterback, and he's got to be that. And part of it is getting his mojo back. We talked about this yesterday. He needs that swag, that confidence, cockiness, whatever the hell you want to call it. That was gone last year, Aditi. He needs to bring that back. And if
which is why winning begets winning. And as tough as that early slate is, you can't get in a hole. And you have to get out there. And, granted, we saw it in Kevin Stefanski's first year where they had that brutal, ugly week 1 game against the Ravens, which I was at, and they climbed out of that. But at this point, there's none of that. Like, you just got to start hot.
Was that the game with the fake punt from their own 30? You talking about his first game ever?
I don't remember.
Oh, I do.
Kevin Stefanski's first game in Baltimore.
Yeah, they ran like a fake punt from their own 30. To this day, I've always meant to ask him what the hell happened.
Well, I asked him.
Whoa, why have you not asked?
I forgot. It was 3 years ago.
I know, but if it's curiosity, it's curiosity. It's not like you're going to write about it. You're just
No,
curious.
I know. I'm not.
That.
All right.
Nothing. And that's the thing. Like, they obviously have a tough schedule to start the season, but I'm sick of the excuses about we want an easy game. When you're a good team and you're a fan of a good team, you don't care who you're playing. You expect to win every week.
Didn't you just watch Patrick Mahomes say on the quarterback series that he thought that the Bills were an easier matchup, but he would much rather face the Bengals?
Yeah, that was fascinating when he said that.
You think that's going to come back?
Don't you? Like, I feel that way. Like, what's the fun in beating an 0-16 team? Like, isn't it so much more fun to take down the top dog? Isn't it so much more fun to feel like you've accomplished something significant against somebody that you really respect as an opponent? 100%. I mean, you should respect all your opponents, but you know what I mean? Respect as a competitor, whatever. 100%. I just think like, you should want to beat the best. And right now, if we, I had this conversation on Pittsburgh radio yesterday, and they asked me to, again, rank the AFC North teams, which I hate doing. But I said, can't you legitimately see that all 4 teams finish above 500? And yes. I think that that's very, very possible. And you should feel good about that as like, hey, we're part of the toughest division. And if you come out of the toughest division, that should buoy you into the playoffs.
No doubt. And the only thing that stinks about it is it hurts you in terms of getting that number 1 seed and getting the bye throughout the playoffs. But yes, I mean, this makes
your Bengals haven't cared about that. Have your Bengals cared about going on the road the last few years?
No, and honestly, when Patrick Mahomes got hurt against Jacksonville, I wanted him to play and be healthy against the Bengals because I wanted the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl, but I didn't want them to beat Chad Henne. That would have felt. I know a lot of people disagree and maybe don't believe me. That would have felt cheap.
Yep.
And the Bengals, listen, let's face it. Against Mahomes, they won or they lost. If Chad Henne had played that game, the Bengals would have won, most likely. So, and who knows what would have happened in the Super Bowl. But you want to beat the best to be the best.
Yep.
That to me is that simple. That's why I don't root for injuries or any of that stuff.
Well, I think that rooting for injuries is so morbid in general. Do people still do that?
I think G. Bush does.
What?
G. Bush roots for injuries. Even though he's had more injuries than anybody I know. He's not in today.
Why would you ever wish that on anyone?
He's not. I don't think he doesn't really root for injuries. But if a guy gets hurt, he's not upset about it. But he's actually not in today because he can't even move his arms.
It's Bull's fault.
The great Vivian Stringer used to always say, "To be the best, you have to beat the best."
That's right.
And she was the Rutgers women's basketball coach who constantly was coming up against Gino.
I thought so too.
You thought it was my friend?
No, I thought it was Ric Flair. Woo! I thought Ric Flair said that.
He probably copped him from Coach Stringer.
What are you, Ted Carmen over here?
What?
With the wrestling references?
It was one reference. We've been on for a year.
Everybody knows who Ric Flair is, Bull.
Come on, man.
Now.
I'm joking.
Hit you with a chair.
Ken has a wrestling reference every 8 seconds.
I've got a book back here. I can check. I can check if there's a Ric
No,
Flair
I agree with Didi. I agree with Bull. I agree with Jason. I think to me it's something that's very authentic and something about it's satisfying about knowing that you actually are battle tested and knowing that you actually went out there, and you played against the best, a mano a mano. They says iron sharpens iron, and the only way to get your iron sharpened is if you go out there and you can beat the tail off some other iron. So I don't have a problem with the Browns' tough start to the schedule. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think everybody in the AFC North is playing each other within the first 3 or 4 weeks. So it's not just the Browns with the tough schedule. This whole division has a tough schedule.
I also think that having to battle is so significant. You mentioned the Jaguars earlier. So I saw the Jaguars last year, week 4 in Philadelphia. And at the time they were 2-1. And I remember before the game, I told my crew, our game crew, I think these guys are going to win their division. And then they go against the Eagles. It was a monsoon the entire game. I mean, literally the rain did not let up. They turned the ball over 5 times. They lost to the Eagles. But I still came out of that game thinking that the Jaguars were much better than I really actually thought the Jaguars were better than the Eagles at that point. They just were really young. And like I said, there were 5 turnovers in a driving monsoon. And Doug Peterson, after that, in fact, told us, because we had him again the next week, that had he had a more veteran team, he wouldn't have even shown the tape. It was such a, one-off because of the weather.
Right.
Well, that actually started a 5-game losing streak. I think that's what it was, a 5-game losing streak for the Jaguars. So they were sitting at 2-6. But they climbed out of 2-6.
Yep.
And they still ended up winning their division. And then when they were in that huge hole in the playoffs against the Chargers, they were able to climb out of that hole. And I think that that's because they knew they could do it. Sometimes it's like you don't know that you can win if your back is against the wall if you haven't had to win when your back was against the wall. So all of these things are so valuable. And it's whether you're beating a good team, whether you're playing a tough opponent, whether you're going through a murderer's row to start the season, whatever it is, it has to set you up for something. If you could come out of it, I don't know, if you can come out of it with some sort of lessons.
Aditi, let's rank the AFC North teams. I'm kidding.
Thank you.
No, let's rank the AFC North cities in terms of who has the best food. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore. Best food at the stadiums. Best food at the stadiums between those 4.
Oh, I never eat the stadium food. Come on.
Just go cities.
You know
Just
what?
go cities. Just go cities.
It's actually a really stupid question because asking Aditi about food is absurd.
Yeah, well,
She
I'm
eats
a
like 3
vegetarian.
things.
Well,
She-
come to me. I eat all the
she doesn't
stadium
eat.
food. I'll
Yeah,
tell you.
Who's the best of those 4?
Cincinnati and Baltimore are both really good.
Yeah.
Really, really, really
Browns
good.
Oh my God. No
Baltimore-
way. I would put Baltimore and Cleveland together as cities.
As cities
I'm
or
doing
both?
stadium
He's doing
food.
stadiums
I'm doing
only.
stadium food.
Like that you buy at a concession stand or that you get in a press box?
No, what we getting? I don't care about the concession stand. I'm media dining.
He's free press box food.
Well, Baltimore does it so. I mean, Baltimore keeps bringing you food after food after food.
So
you
does
get a
Cincinnati.
hot meal at halftime.
I give Baltimore the edge because of the crab cakes.
Okay.
Baltimore
Okay,
brings
the
out crab
Cincinnati
cakes.
food in the press box is atrocious.
Oh,
For
what?
12 years, I've been eating that food. The Cincinnati press box food
Wow.
is horrific.
Are you sure you're
And
not
don't
thinking
tell me
Cleveland?
A hot dog at halftime. Don't tell me a hot dog at halftime is the same as Baltimore, which puts out a whole entire fresh meal.
Cincinnati puts out a
At
full
halftime.
hot breakfast buffet before the game.
All right.
Don't nobody
Yeah,
want no
I'm
skyline
always on the
chili,
field,
Jason.
so-
So, all right.
No, I don't like the skyline.
And what's third?
Almost
Pittsburgh
swore.
or Cleveland? The Browns have the worst spread?
Browns have the worst spread. I think the Browns have the worst spread in the division.
The Haslam's
even
are
remember
rich
the
and
Pittsburgh
richer
food
than
right now.
every other
Yeah.
person in Cleveland combined. Can they put a free spread out, some nice spread out there for the media?
Oh, the Browns
For
food
crying out loud.
Browns food's terrible.
That's embarrassing, Browns. That's freaking embarrassing. Get a better spread out there. Jimmy, he's too busy taking a crap at the owners' meeting.
Aditi, it's the only film we have of Jimmy. So they just show it over and over
He
and
walks
over
like he
and
just
over.
He walks like he just took a crap and still has swamp ass. That's how he walks.
Okay, so remember last year I was
Yes.
hosting the Inside Training Camp show for
Right.
the Browns with Nathan Zagura.
Yeah.
So one day last year I brought my son, who had just turned 7, to camp with me.
Right.
And we walk into the main facility. We're kind of in the front vestibule.
Mm-hmm.
And who's there but Jimmy Haslam with some sort of, political, I don't know, some people on the municipal board or city council or something.
Yeah.
Jimmy Haslam immediately walks over. He bends down to my son's height and he says, "Well, who do we have here?" And he asks my son his name. He shakes his hand. He asks him how old he is. He says, "Oh, are you going in 2nd grade?" I couldn't believe that the owner of the Browns knew that a 7-year-old would be about to go in 2nd grade. And he proceeded to have full on about a 7-minute conversation with my son, which he 100% did not have to do. And I was so impressed by. And whatever you want to say, in my mind, that goes so far.
That is great. That is great and very nice. He still looks like he's walking with a swamp ass. I'm sorry. That's it.
Can you
I'm not
take me
used-
on, Anthony, when he does things like this, take me off the camera.
I gotta go to the facility after this.
Yeah, why is the bull
I'm
saying
going to be
I
on
walk
the
like I swamp ass?
sideline next week. Okay, so I'm going to be
You're out.
on the sideline next week. And
Yeah.
J.W. Johnson is going to say to me, "So, hey, what were you saying about my father-in-law? Really? Is that what you were doing?"
Do you say, and you know what you should respond and be like, JW, you'd be working in a factory if you didn't marry a rich girl. So to calm down, pal.
Oh, goodness.
All right, guys.
JW Johnson.
Anthony.
Great
isn't helping
accomplishments
me.
he's pulled on his
He
own.
said,
Sorry.
Anthony, this
I've
isn't
been
helping.
flashing the ad sign for a while. It's fine.
Good to be a
Let
rich son-in-law.
let this woman go
Sorry,
feed her children.
Sorry,
This has
Aditi.
been the most painful 34 minutes of her life.
Week 1.
The vacuum is running. The children are hungry. The phone is
I'm
ringing.
throwing the owners of the Browns
Dave,
under the
I'm
bus
so
because they're rich,
sorry.
spoiled,
I'm
entitled
disgusted.
asses. No, you didn't say that.
All hell is broken loose.
Yes. What game are you doing week 1 of the NFL
There
season?
goes
for
current
CBS?
Browns players on this show.
Week 1 of the NFL season, I have Texans at Ravens.
You're doing a Browns game in the first 3 weeks, though, right? Or am I making
I
that
am.
up?
I have week 3. I have the Titans at the Browns, week 3.
Okay.
You coming in studio?
No.
Maybe.
Aren't you just going to
maybe.
come for the weekend? Or no?
Oh, you know what I could maybe do? Next Friday for before the Commanders game.
That'd be awesome.
Because I
Yeah,
think
let's do
in
it.
Thursday. Yeah, so if I don't have a production meeting, like if I don't have meetings, because the game's a night game next week, right? Friday?
Yeah. Yes.
So maybe we could do that.
That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
so if I come in Thursday, then I can come in Friday in studio.
Yeah, bring your son. We'll talk off the air. Bring your son. He can hang out with my son. They'll have a good time.
Well, sweet. You know, he's still a hardcore Bills fan.
I know.
That's
it's all right.
fine. He's a Bengals fan.
You-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got to deal with Bull every day.
They could debate Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen.
Sure. Well, we need Joe Burrow to get healthy before that's really worth anything.
Yeah, I'd take an injured Joe Burrow over Josh Allen, but that's another story for
Here
another
you
day.
go.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye, Aditi.
Bye, Aditi.
Aditi didn't say any of the bad things about the Haslams. It was all me. It was all me. I like taking
Yo,
those
they be in the
shots.
chat like, why you got a Bengals fan as a host? He shouldn't be on the show.
You know, only an ignoramus would say that because I'm more likely to give an honest opinion than you homers around here. Well, Jason's not a homer, but everybody else is a homer.
I'm not a homer, man.
You a homer?
You're a homer.
I'm not a homer. I'm not a homer.
Of course you're a
I
homer.
really feel I'm an optimist.
You are a homer. With a
optimist.
capital H and a double M homer.
I never understood that. Like, do people always think that the people talking sports to them are supposed to root for their team? Is that a benefit?
I don't-
I don't really listen. I don't ever really listen to Cincinnati sports talk. I shouldn't say I don't really. I never have at once listened to Cincinnati sports talk. But I listen. My man James Rapine, who used to work
Yeah, I
here,
know James.
I watch his Bengals videos, and he's a fan of the Bengals. But I feel like he's kind of unbiased. But even if he wasn't, like I know what's his name, who's friends with Mikey, Ben Baby. That guy's not a Bengals fan. He does a great job covering the Bengals.
I remember when I first started.
And by the way, most beat reporters are not fans of the team.
No, I'm just saying. I remember
If
when
they
I
are, they're
first
not doing their job
I
very
remember
well.
when I first started at the radio station,
Yeah.
and it was just like, damn, everybody here is a fan of like all different kind of teams. So, like, no, I mean, I learned that in media school. Sometimes you're going to cover sports in a city that you're not from,
Yeah.
and of teams that you're not fans of. So,
It is funny to me because when I worked in New York, obviously I wasn't full time there, so I wasn't on as often and didn't develop as many relationships with fans as I have here. But I don't root for any New York teams.
Yeah.
And nobody ever complained about that. Nobody ever cared.
No, I get sick.
Here, people care about
People
that.
email me, you're not a real fan. I'm like, you're right. I'm dead inside. I'm not. I don't
That's true.
care.
He is dead inside.
I'm dead inside. I don't care who
That
wins.
is 100% true. All right, Anthony, what do you got for us?
Yeah, before we move on here, guys, I just want to remind everybody that you can become a member. You can become a member of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show for $4.99 a month. We get overtime. You get some perks with the Cleveland Clothing Company. We still have T-shirts available. Don't forget about those. And you can gift memberships going into the football season. If you have a friend in the chat that doesn't have a membership, you can gift memberships to them and gift memberships to everybody in the chat. Now, the next topic, Jason, apparently you have been dying to talk about this.
Well, I wouldn't say I was dying to talk about it.
This is what Earl relayed to me.
I didn't say dying.
Before we get to
I
this,
never used the term. Wait. I never said dying. I
Jason-
said in the rundown. I said
Actually-
Jason has some pretty cool notes from things that he has.
But before we get to
about
that real
this.
quick, I just Steve Becker had texted us that Philly fans root for injuries. And I think there are a lot of fans that root for injuries, but it reminded me of yet another Instagram video that I was watching where this guy was asking Eagles fans or Philly fans, who would you rather come back to Philly, Ben Simmons or Carson Wentz? And this one guy goes, I'd rather see my dead grandparents' bones. They have either of those people
Oh,
funny. Anyway,
God.
go ahead. Let's talk about being a good family man.
Yeah, so we're talking about the work-life balance of NFL
Yeah.
players today is the topic
Right.
next.
And why Kirk Cousins is a failure when it matters.
All right, so no. So this is the only thing how it started. So as everyone knows now, I was driving home from West Virginia watching quarterback, and so I could watch the whole series.
Yeah.
And the one thing that stuck out to me was Kirk Cousins saying he takes Tuesdays off.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting of like, he's not in the building. The quarterback of the team is not in the building on Tuesdays. And so I just threw it out in our group text. I just said, one thing that stuck out to me was that. And you're like, that's probably why I can't win a big game. You're not in the building on Tuesdays. That's why they can't win.
Is Patrick Mahomes taking Tuesdays off?
So I just and so I poked around with a couple players and was like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
And but no one really had a problem with it. And they said a lot. It's common, especially among quarterbacks with families.
Yeah.
That they take Tuesdays off. It's not really an install day or anything. Really, you get the game plan on Wednesday. Wednesday's really the first install day.
Yeah.
And it's like Joe Thomas took Tuesdays off. Bitonio takes Tuesdays off. Like a lot of veterans that aren't quarterbacks, that's their off day.
But our quarterback, because I was joking on my response.
Are you sure?
No, I was joking. But
Because me and Jason kind of look like, well, damn, boy.
I was
the hell with the kids. You'll see them in January.
I was
Get your ass in the facility.
But I'm curious, are the best quarterbacks, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, whatever, whoever you want to throw in the Aaron Rodgers, are those guys taking Tuesdays off? I'm curious.
I do think that family situation has a lot to do with it. Burrow single.
That's true. Mahomes as a kid, though.
Mahomes as a kid.
Yeah.
So this may be, it gets to the point where maybe
Aaron
he
Rodgers,
does.
who knows what's going on in his
who
house?
knows?
I don't know.
But I do think that it's specific to the situation that you're in. If you're a young single guy, you're probably at a facility. What else you got to do?
Yeah.
And I talked to one player who said, like, if you don't watch film at home, like, there shouldn't be a difference. You can watch film at home. If you're not watching the film at the facility, you know what I mean? Like, you can watch it either place. But it sounds like Cousins takes the whole day off.
I actually thought it was cool that he responds, at least in this show, that's what I don't know if he does this all the time, but that he responded to fan mail as part of that Tuesday.
Yeah. But you use that against him in our group. You're like, he's only he's rating fans.
You know.
He's not taking the day off.
Busting balls in our group chat. But I actually agree that Kirk Cousins came off very well.
Yeah.
And I didn't like him. I had bad thoughts about him going into this. And I feel I like him a lot more after watching this. I thought he came off extremely well. Now, listen, the reality is he is falling on his face in big spots almost all the time, including last year. They had the second best record in the NFC, and they lost to a nothing Giants team in the playoffs.
But if he'd have been in the facility on Tuesday.
No, I don't really believe that. But, but he has to account for that somehow.
Well, and the point I think that Mike and I both made is like he could move in and live there. He's gotten the absolute most out of his ability.
Is that where
he's just not as good.
Damn, Mike, tell us how you really feel. Yeah, okay.
He's just not as good. He's just not as physically gifted and as good as some of those other guys.
Yesterday, Mike Sando talked about the Tier 1 quarterbacks all have at least one elite trait.
Yeah.
And in Patrick Mahomes' case, he's pretty much all elite traits. And so do some of the other guys. I don't think Kirk Cousins has any elite traits. And for him to be as good as he is without that, it's pretty impressive.
It's a product of the preparation
and
getting the absolute. He's like the Matthew Dellavedova of NFL quarterbacks.
Right.
He squeezed absolutely everything he could get out of his ability.
So, I thought it was cool. I know me and Jason talked about it a lot because it made me think about Deshaun Watson, right? You hear a lot of people talking about, well, every time you looked on social media, he was out of the country, traveling and things like that.
That's stupid.
But I just think that I think work-life balance is important, not just for quarterbacks, but for anybody in any profession. I can speak to myself. I'm still fresh in this, and I'm chasing it so hard, right? And I think that I'm learning that not having that balance, it can impact negatively the relationships that truly matter to you, right? And so I think that if you can find that balance and still cater to the relationships outside of your profession that matter, it probably actually makes you better at your profession.
I don't know that work-life balance is a good explanation for what's happening here. If you're in the NFL, especially if you're a quarterback or a coach, you have no like when I think of balance, I'm thinking, okay, we're getting on the teeter-totter until we're even. That's not what's happening here. There's no balance. He's taking some time with his family. I mean, you can't be an NFL quarterback and spend the time with your family that you'd really like to during the season.
No, but I also
But
think
it's good to spend that he is taking this day in reality.
I think the NFL, more than any other sport, has this toxic, macho,
Oh, 100%.
we're going to work 18 hours and
Yeah.
we're going to sleep in the facility.
To the point of stupidity.
What
yeah.
are you really accomplishing?
Yeah,
what
nothing.
are you really getting done? But I just think it's this whole you have to prove that you're working harder than everybody
dumb.
else. At some point, it becomes information overload. There's only so much you can do.
And if you're working
go home and have dinner with your kids.
Right. If you're working that many hours, you can get to the point of exhaustion where what are you accomplishing?
Yeah.
I heard it couldn't be more different than football, but they're celebrities in a different vein. When you hear, a number of the former Saturday Night Live cast members, I've heard, go on Howard Stern and do interviews, and across the board, especially David Spade talks about this a lot, but a lot of the guys have talked about this on there. The fact that, I don't know if it's the night before, one day during the week, everybody's supposed to stay the entire night, overnight, not go to sleep, and work on that week's show. And all these guys are like, this. It was so stupid. I don't know why Lauren does that. And then I think David Spade was like, at one point, I don't know if it was Chris Farley or somebody he worked with, was just like, well, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going home. Because it's crazy. What are you accomplishing at 4 a.m?
Yeah, that's dumb.
I just think to what Jason said is toxic. And I think, sometimes you have to detox yourself from either the way you was brought up or trained and thought that you was taught, because for the longest, me myself is grind. If you work 8 hours a day, you need to be working 16. Or if you're doing this, you could be doing more to do more. And, it just made me think about Tom Brady, because that's the other side of it. I wonder how much not having that work-life balance impacted his very last season in the NFL, because everything that he started to go through in his personal life, because he didn't have that balance. And I just think that can happen to either last one of us, no matter what the profession is. And so, to Jason's point, he used the perfect word. It's toxic sometimes. And you got to understand, those things matter just as much, and those things can fuel you to be better at your job. And you can see the results of it if you don't pour into it. Because he was horrible, not horrible, but for Tom Brady standards, his last season was not that good. And we all know it's because of everything that he was going through in his personal life.
I mean, on a much, much smaller scale.
Yeah.
For 10 years, I never saw my family. I was on the road covering the NBA. I was never home. And when LeBron left, I made a complete career pivot.
Right.
And went into a completely different role to where I'm home. I take Tuesdays off now and Wednesdays. And some Thursdays. And it's so I'm having the best time of my life. I'm having so much fun being home with my kids.
Part of the reason I quit my job at the Fan was because I wasn't getting to spend enough time with my son.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to coach him as he got older in Little League. That's why I had to quit.
I missed my kid's birthday 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
Because he had the audacity to be born during the NBA Finals.
That is obnoxious.
So I missed his birthday.
That's your fault.
I missed AJ's birthday 4 years in a row.
I
missed Christmas. Well, yeah, clearly. I missed Christmas 4 years in a row. I've stayed home for one.
Right.
No, that sucks. It's nuts.
We've all been conned.
For a friggin' basketball game.
We've all been conned by societal norms or the billionaires or whatever it is to believe that work is more important than family. That's been pounded into our heads. That you are who your job is. You're not.
And no, you're not.
And family is always most important. Anthony, you got a final thing you want to say on this?
I worked at a job before here where it was very heavily in sales. I was in the marketing department, but I was friends with a lot of the salespeople, and they had no work-life balance. And the people, they thought that was normal. And I'm a big proponent of it. When I go home on the weekends, I watch the games, I do my homework, but I don't answer half the text messages.
It's inappropriate. Answer the freaking text, will you?
Sorry. Hey, I said I was in for fantasy football 3 months after. What was that?
You don't have kids?
No, I don't have kids.
You can still have work-life balance without kids.
Come on, boy.
You don't have to have kids.
I have a girlfriend that lives 2 hours away from me.
You either got to be married or a parent in order to qualify for work-life balance.
You don't qualify, Anthony.
Yeah, I got a girlfriend that lives 2 hours away, so I spend time driving back and forth.
That's inappropriate.
So answer our text while you're driving in the car for 2 hours. What else do you have to do?
Jason's watching
I can't do anything right today.
If Jason can watch a TV show while he's driving, you can text while you're driving.
I'm listening more than watching. It's like a visual podcast.
Yeah, right. Your girlfriend living 2 hours away is completely inappropriate, by the way. She's got to get out. This is enough.
Break up with her already. Find one closer to home.
I would say either Jason's right, you got to dump her, or she's got to move closer. I mean, that's it. You can't move. You got a job. What is she doing? What's her
Well,
job?
she works in
move.
Columbus. She works for the Children's Hospital down in Columbus.
So-
All
What's the
big
Children's
deal.
Hospital here?
There's hospitals here.
Come on. What's more important, a children's hospital or this show? I mean,
For me, this show. For her, the Children's Hospital, probably.
you tell her to get our priorities straight. Enough of this children's hospital nonsense. She lives in Columbus.
She does. Yeah.
That's annoying.
So it's annoying for both of us,
Yeah.
but not getting into all of that. Do you
Yeah.
guys want to do final takes, or do you guys want to talk about Guardian silver linings? We got 10 minutes left in the show today.
There
I
is,
don't
what's
have
the- I
final
mean,
take.
you brought the Ahmed Rosario. You want to save that for overtime?
Yeah, that was going to be our overtime.
By the way, did you see? We'll get to. We can get to final thoughts in a second. By the way, did you see the? And now I'm hesitant to bring it up because people are like, oh, he's talking about his team. The Cubs have scored 36 runs.
Oh, he's talking about his team.
Did you see that?
I saw you texted something.
30.
About it.
Because I said the Cubs have scored more runs in their last 16 innings than the Guardians have scored in their last 10 games.
Is that bad?
I did see this
Yeah.
from the Browns.
Yeah, go ahead.
From the Browns app. The Life and Legacy of Jim Brown is scheduled to air starting at 1 p.m. on the Browns mobile app, website, and YouTube channel. So, Browns fans, they're going to honor Jim Brown today at 1 p.m. You can check that out after you check out overtime.
What do you mean they're going to honor him?
It just says what it says.
It's a ceremony.
It's a ceremony.
Oh, I see. All right,
1 o'clock.
Are you into that?
No, I'm sitting here. It's 12:50.
Okay.
And I have to be at Biosport in Westlake at 1. I knew that was I mean, listen, I don't want to be disrespectful to Jim Brown, obviously. But no, I'm not covering that. I got a couple things to do this afternoon before I head down to the game tonight.
I thought that the number 32 with the helmet, I actually seen a couple people on Twitter saying it too. That should have been one of the options for the midfield logo. Or just the 32 itself.
They still may come up with something. They'll probably put something on the field.
Yeah.
Maybe something at the 32-yard line or something.
Yeah. That would have been a good idea to have that as one of the choices, I think.
His
I would
name.
like that better than any of the choices they have for me.
They could do something on the uniform. There's a lot of options.
As for the Guardians, do you guys have a final take you want to hit on?
I mean, so I guess my silver lining in all of this is last year was kind of like an anomaly. I can't say anomaly. I struggle to say words like that. Sorry. And I think this year was more realistic up to where they are. And I think that now they can take a step back and really assess this thing and just hopefully try to put a better team together.
I actually don't agree with that. I think they're in between. I don't think they're as good as the team as last year. I don't think they're as bad as this year's
They're
team.
500.
Well,
it's not like they're on pace to lose 100 games. They're a 500 team.
no, well, they're under 2 games under now.
All right,
but,
that's still a
but
500 team.
I think they're going to crater. I do think they're going to
Well,
crater.
they might now.
I think the team is. It seems like there's a lot of anger in the locker room
Yeah.
about what's happened here.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Because when the front office decides to quit on the season,
Well, okay. How about hit a ball once in a while?
agreed.
Like, if you want to be pissed off at yourself because
Listen,
you suck.
the team ultimately is their fault. They didn't play
Absolutely.
well enough. However, we all know the reason why, but they are in the hunt, very much in it. And front office said, nope, we're not trying to. We're not. Winning is not a priority.
Every move they made was the correct move. Every move. In this last week. Moving on from Rosario, trading Savali at the peak of his value.
Yes.
And dumping Bell's contract. All three of those were the correct moves.
True. But that's irrelevant to the players.
Totally agree.
You
But
know?
you can't worry about that.
Agreed. But now you.
But now you
the
do have to
season
worry about
craters,
that. Now you do have to worry about that.
And there's a reason why Chris Antonetti went to go to talk to the players.
Yes.
He's trying to
Yes.
convince them we didn't quit on you, but they did.
A friend of
But-
mine asked me this question. I think
Yeah.
you two are perfect for me to ask you all. He asked me yesterday. He said, a lot of you see with the Cavaliers, you see with the Browns, the media will go directly and talk to a player after a bad game or when the team is in turmoil.
Yeah.
And he said, why doesn't anybody go talk to Jose Ramirez? Now, that people say he doesn't speak English well.
He does
depending on
speak
who-
English.
Depending on who you talk to, but
Yeah.
it got me thinking, I would be very, very interested to know what he feels. I can't remember the last time a reporter said, Jose Ramirez said this about X, Y, and Z. I'm very curious to know what he feels about what's going on, especially since he left so much money on the table to make this team competitive.
Jason, do you know if Zach spoke to him yesterday? Does he speak to Ramirez regularly, or?
Most of Jose does speak a fair amount of English.
Of course he does.
But he goes through translators.
Right, because he's more comfortable.
There's
little nuances in the language that he's been here long enough. He understands. He knows the language.
It's 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes, like the fabric of the clubhouse, the nice thing about what we can do is we can just sidle up to a guy and just have a random conversation with him, a very informal, how do you feel, where are things at? It's harder to do that with guys who need translators because you're going through an intermediary, and are you really getting what they're actually saying? Yeah. Are you really, it's hard to get the genuine feel of the moment.
And Jose's well, but what about Naylor? What's Naylor thinking right now?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him.
Or do you know if Zach has spoken to him?
I do not know. He's on the trip. Zach's in Houston. He's on the trip.
So I mean, I am curious. If I'm Jose right now, I'm pissed.
Sure.
But what I'm really going to be pissed is if they go another offseason and do nothing. Because let's face it, the Guardians have essentially done nothing to make the team better on the major league level for a number of years now.
Well, they tried, and they blew up in their face.
They tried. They tried with scraps.
They tried with mid-level. Josh Bell is a mid-level free agent, and Zunino was a scrap.
Mid-level?
Yeah, $16.5 million is mid-level.
Right.
That's not elite.
All right, fair.
But it's
mid-level.
not a scrap.
A mid-level and a scrap.
Yeah. That's where they live. That's where they're always going to operate.
Well, they shouldn't. It's unacceptable.
But again, are they ever going to go after Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani? No.
I'm not asking them to go after Aaron Judge.
So who do you want them to get?
Go after Cody Bellinger.
How much is he going to get in free agency this winter?
$25 million.
They should be able to do that.
$27 million, maybe?
They should be able to. They should be able to do that.
You know, I mean, there's a level between Ohtani and Judge and Josh Bell. There's probably two levels between.
Probably two levels between.
So, like, get somebody in one of those levels for once. I mean, they haven't done that since Encarnacion.
But also, you have to convince that player to come here, which is not always easy.
Well, if you pay them, then they'll come. They go wherever the money is.
But they can get that money elsewhere in a city that they desire more.
We talk a lot about mid-market teams, and I'm just looking to be educated with this question.
Yeah.
I look at the Cincinnati Reds, and over my sports fandom, I've seen them sign guys to pretty damn decent contracts over the time, and I hear this term, well, we play in this market.
Well, they have. I mean, who have they really signed?
I mean, I can remember Votto. I can remember Ken Griffey back in the day. I'm just saying over the history of time, I've seen them spend
Ken
more.
Griffey was a long time ago.
But the point I'm making, over my history of time, I've seen the Cincinnati Reds spend more money to acquire talent and try to improve their roster than I have with the Guardians.
And
I guess
true.
Why?
Well, the Guardians just signed Ramirez.
But the Votto contract is bigger than anything the Guardians ever handed out.
Right, but look, if I'm a Reds fan right now, I'm pissed off.
But they did it. So
no, wait a second. The Reds, outside of Votto, haven't signed anybody in years. Who else have they signed?
But it's still a bigger contract. It was a homegrown guy.
I gotcha.
And they locked him up and they kept him.
Was it bigger than Ramirez's contract?
Oh yeah. Well, at the time, it was a big contract.
Second. Besides Votto,
the Ramirez contract is what, 10
years later?
It was
not a great contract because Votto hasn't been that great since then.
Correct. A lot of the contracts don't work out.
But wait a second here. Hold on. The Reds have not signed any other significant free agent in the last 10 years that I can think of. And the Reds, who were in first place in the NL Central, in a better division than the AL Central, just sat out the trade deadline. And with the Guardians, I can at least argue that I understand why they made those trades because they stink. The Reds have been playing really well, and they sat out the trade deadline.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking this year. I'm just talking about.
Done anything.
I'm just talking about over a period of time. I've seen small market teams like the Reds, like the St. Louis Cardinals, like the Brewers.
Spend more. Wait a second.
I'm just telling you what I see. Okay, so I'm looking to be educated. Like, what's the difference between a small market team like the Reds who can spend that money on a guy like Votto? Yeah. Why can they do it and the Guardians can't?
With Jose Ramirez.
But he just said they never handed out anything.
Votto's contract was $225 million.
And Ramirez is what?
158 or something like that.
Whatever it was their best player. Who cares? You know,
$100 million. That's a pretty significant difference.
Yeah, the significant difference is Ramirez is better than Votto.
But to your point,
the point is the Reds have not signed anybody else besides Votto.
Most small market teams cannot.
And the Cardinals are not a small market team.
The Cardinals are not a small.
They're not a small market team.
Most teams cannot swing the type of deals that you're talking about. Votto was the exception for sure. Griffey was the exception, and even that was
a long time.
And that was a below market deal that he took with Cincinnati.
Right.
a lot of teams, and a lot of times it comes down to your stadium deal. Baseball is completely different than NFL and NBA. NFL and NBA, they make so much money off their television deals that the location of the city doesn't matter. That's why the NBA can put teams in Memphis and Oklahoma City
Right.
and Vancouver back, whatever. The market size doesn't matter because the television contracts are so massive, everybody's making money. That's not the case in baseball where they rely heavily on their television
and the Reds,
contracts.
I just think the Reds are a bad comparison because the Guardians have been a much better franchise than the Reds.
Oh,
And
they
I don't
have.
know that the Reds have had a higher payroll than the Guardians all that often in the last 10, 15
I don't
years.
know.
We'd have to
study
double check
that
it.
closely.
More coming up on Overtime. We'll see you there. The Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. See ya. Hasta mañana.